Chapter 651. The man slowly walked down from the sky. His tall figure shrouded the ground, and his powerful aura made one's heart tremble as if there was a deep sense of oppression. Lin Yuting hurriedly lowered her head, not daring to look at this man. Otherwise, she would feel that her neck would be crushed by his powerful aura at any time. The others felt the same way as they lowered their heads tightly, not even having the strength to lift their heads. Ghost Emperor, you're here? Hoopa suppressed the excitement in his heart and quickly walked to Yun Xiao. I've been waiting for you on Master's orders. Yun Xiao's gaze was as cold as ever, and his black eyes would never have any extra emotions. The corners of his lips under his mask curled into a cold and hard angle as he walked through the city gates. Ghost Emperor. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from the crowd. Lin Yuting had already raised her head and looked straight at the man who had walked through the city gates. A glint flashed across her infatuated eyes. I'm Guo Fulan, a disciple of the Doctors Association. I've heard a lot about you, Ghost Emperor, so I've been waiting here. Under Luo Fu's tutelage, there was indeed a disciple called Guo Fulan, and Lin Yuting had disguised herself as her. When Hoopa heard Lin Yuting's words, his expression changed and he hurriedly shouted, Guo Fulan, what are you trying to do? Can you bear the responsibility if you alarm Lord Ghost Emperor? Lin Yuting clenched her fists tightly. She knew that this was her last hope, and she must not give up. Lord Ghost Emperor, I've heard my senior sister Lin Yuting mention your name. My senior sister Lin Yuting is not only unparalleled in beauty, she's also elegant and kind. Now, she's been framed. Please help me, Lord Ghost Emperor. Yun Xiao did not seem to hear the pleas of the woman behind him as he walked through the city gates. Dressed in black, he appeared cold and unfeeling. Lin Yuting thought that her words had no allure to the man. She bit her lips and continued, Lord Ghost Emperor, senior sister Yuting offended that woman because of you. Because that woman admires you, the kind-hearted senior sister Yuting couldn't bear for her to be consigned to eternal damnation, so she persuaded her out of goodwill. Who knew that it would lead to her crazy revenge? This time, Yuting has indeed suffered an undeserved calamity. Lord Ghost Emperor, you must help her. Among the crowd, Milk Tea's eyes were filled with contempt as she stared at Lin Yuting mockingly. Unparalleled beauty? Elegant and kind? Was Lin Yuting praising herself? This was the first time it had heard someone praise itself in such a narcissistic way, of course. The premise was that Milk Tea knew that the fake face was Lin Yuting. If it was someone else who didn't know the truth, they wouldn't feel disgusted by Lin Yuting's words. After all, Lin Yuting was currently wearing someone else's face. Yun Xiao's figure gradually disappeared from the streets. From the beginning until the end, he had not even spared Lin Yuting a glance, as though he had treated her as air and directly ignored her. Guo Fulan, what are you doing? Hoopa was a little angry and glared fiercely at Guo Fulan. Lin Yuting had told me that you're sensible and would never do anything that would embarrass the medical city. Why would you say such things in front of the Ghost Emperor? Lin Yuting sneered. I'm only standing up for senior sister Ye. How can that slut, Yun Luofeng, compare to senior sister Yuting? Now, this is the only chance to save senior sister Yuting, and I will never give it up. Hoopa was stunned as he stared at Lin Yuting in astonishment. Guo Fulan, when did your relationship with Lin Yuting become so good? First, she came here to beg me to help you because of you. Now, you're risking your life for her. Chapter 652. How would he know that the person standing in front of him was not Guo Fulan? It was Lin Yuting who had already changed her appearance. Hoopa, I want to attend the doctor's conference with you. Lin Yuting's eyes darkened. At that time, Yun Luofeng will also appear. I want to take this opportunity to use the Ghost Emperor to get rid of her. No way. Hoopa's expression changed. Return to the Doctors Association immediately. I will not tolerate you anymore. Do you think that you still have a chance to go back on your word? Lin Yuting laughed coldly. If you don't bring me to the conference, I will tell your master that you have accepted senior sister Yuting's bribe. You? Hoopa angrily pointed at Lin Yuting and his body trembled slightly. He regretted it. He regretted accepting Lin Yuting's bribe. Otherwise, he would not be in such a passive position now. All right, I will do as you wish. Before Hoopa left, he turned back to look at Lin Yuting. However, I feel that you and senior sister Yuting are becoming more and more alike. Guo Fulan's heart suddenly trembled. She thought that she would be exposed, but she saw Hoopa turn around and leave, hurriedly chasing in the direction that Yun Xiao had disappeared in. At the conference hall, under the vast blue sky, all the elders took out the treasures that they had obtained over the past few years and proudly welcomed the envious gazes of the people around them. The doctors' conference, in layman's terms, was a conference to flaunt one's wealth. Every time before the doctors' conference, people from various forces would search for precious treasures to flaunt in the Doctors' Association. As Yun Luofeng had only sent people to monitor the people from the medical city, he did not restrict their activities in the Doctors' Association. Hence, on the day of the conference, the people from the medical city also went to the conference hall. Lin Hao saw the young lady in white in the crowd at first glance. He could not help but clench his fists as a fierce glint flashed across his eyes. At this moment, the young lady was like a moon in the hearts of the masses. Whether it was the elders or disciples of the Doctors' Association or the people from other forces, they all surrounded her and placed the treasures in their hands in front of her as if they were presenting a treasure. Miss Yun, I have painstakingly obtained this blood guillotine. If you want it, I can give it to you. However, I have a small request. Can you guide me in my medical skills? As for my 1,000-year dragon turtle grass, I'll give it to Miss Yun. As for my request, it's the same as his. I only need a little guidance from Miss Yun. Such a precious medicinal herb naturally needs to be matched with a powerful physician. Therefore, this medicinal herb is useless in my hands. Why don't I give it to Miss Yun? She can maximize its effects. These people had once treated medicinal ingredients as priceless treasures, not to mention the medicinal ingredients that they had brought to the Doctors' Association to show off. Now, they were fighting to give it to Yun Luofeng, afraid that the young girl would reject their request. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows evilly and instructed Lin Ruabai, "Little Bai, take the medicinal ingredients and note down the names of these doctors. I will be staying in the Doctors' Association for a few more days. If you have any questions, you can ask me." As a doctor, what he lacked the most was precious medicinal ingredients. But now, Yun Luofeng had found a way to obtain medicinal ingredients faster. Then can we use medicinal herbs to exchange for a chance to guide them? The elders of the Doctors' Association held their breaths and looked at Yun Luofeng nervously. Yun Luofeng thought for a moment and then nodded. If the herbs are rare enough, I can answer a few of your questions. Chapter 653. All the elders were excited. Some of the old men did not wait for their companions to react and ran towards the place where they stored their medicinal ingredients. They wanted to be ahead of everyone else and present their medicinal ingredients to Yun Luofeng. Father, Lin Hao frowned. Why do all those people want to curry favor with Yun Luofeng? Lin Gu was stunned and felt a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would not have let Lin Hao come. But in the end, he did not reject his request and brought him to the venue. Lin Ji's eyes flickered a few times and he replied, "That's because of Tianya. Yun Luofeng and Tianya have an improper relationship. In order to curry favor with Tianya, they naturally pestered Yun Luofeng." Lin Hao suddenly understood and looked at Yun Luofeng with disdain. So that's how it is. This woman is really dirty. Thinking of this, Lin Hao planned to ridicule Yun Luofeng. But at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly appeared and enveloped the entire venue. Yun Luofeng was all too familiar with this aura, so familiar that he could recognize it even if he closed his eyes. At the end of the venue, the man's cold eyes were tightly locked onto the young girl who was surrounded by all the stars. It was as if there was a trace of a shallow smile on his lips, so shallow that it almost disappeared. When their eyes met, a strange feeling spread between the two of them and spread to the surroundings, causing the man's body temperature to lose its previous coldness. The man only looked at her quietly. The young girl's figure was imprinted in his eyes and engraved in his heart. Engraved in his heart and bones, unforgettable for a lifetime. Hoopa and Lin Yuting hurried over and saw the man standing silently at the end of the venue. They did not know what had happened, but the man's aura was no longer as oppressive as before. At this moment, Lin Yiting suddenly saw Yun Luofeng madly rushing towards Yun Xiao. She was like a wild wolf, and Yun Xiao was a delicious dessert in the wolf's mouth. That undisguised emotion made Lin Yiting's heart happy, and the corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile. Yun Luofeng, I had thought that you were smarter than others, but I never thought that you would be so stupid. You actually became so impulsive after seeing the Ghost Emperor. With the Ghost Emperor's personality of not liking strangers, her blood might splatter on the spot. As if she could already see Yun Luofeng's miserable appearance as his blood splattered on the spot. The smile on Lin Yiting's face grew even wider. Her sinister eyes coldly stared at the white-clothed girl who was rushing towards Yun Xiao. Facing the young girl who was like a hungry wolf pouncing on its prey, not only did Yun Xiao not make a move, she instead opened her arms wide and the corners of her cold lips gradually rose into an arc. Bang! Yun Luofeng's body fiercely pressed against Yun Xiao, pressing the man fiercely against the ground. She kissed him without restraint, her arms tightly pressed against the ground. The two of them were so engrossed in their kiss that they seemed to have become a world of their own. It was as if they had forgotten the people around them. Lin Yiting hurriedly covered her mouth and took a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with terror, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Not only did Yun Luofeng hug the Ghost Emperor, he even forcefully kissed him. But the Ghost Emperor, who had such a cold personality, not only did he not refuse, he even seemed to be enjoying it. Furthermore, with the Ghost Emperor's strength, if he had not willingly fallen down, Yun Luofeng would not have been able to push him to the ground. In other words, the Ghost Emperor had willingly allowed himself to be pressed down by her. When she thought of this, despair rose in Lin Yiting's heart. The man whom she had regarded as her last hope was actually related to Yun Luofeng. Chapter 654. Yun Luofeng finally let go of the man she had pinned down. She smiled evilly and pointed a finger at the man. Yun Xiao, during the time I wasn't by your side, did anyone teach you? I only allow you to teach me. The man raised his eyes and stared at Yun Luofeng seriously. In this lifetime, he would only allow this woman to get close to him. At the same time, he would only be taught by her. Yun Luofeng hugged Yun Xiao once again. Her entire body pressed against his, and her chin rested gently on his shoulder. She lowered her eyes and said, Yun Xiao, I missed you. After a year of separation, she finally understood what it meant to miss someone. Perhaps that inadvertent glimpse of him that year was destined to make her fall into his hands. But she willingly fell into his trap. How could this be? Lin Gu stumbled back and stared at Yun Xiao in fear. He gulped fiercely. How did the Ghost Emperor know Yun Luofeng? Father, what are you talking about? Isn't the Ghost Emperor my brother-in-law? A woman like Yun Luofeng can't even be compared to a brothel girl. How could she be worthy of the Ghost Emperor? After Yun Zhao's appearance, the entire venue had fallen into silence. As a result, Lin Hao's words were clearly heard by everyone present in the venue. How? Lin Gu roared angrily. Shut your mouth. This was the first time he had lost his temper at Lin Hao in so many years. Hence, Lin Hao's temper flared up. Father, you were the one who said that the Ghost Emperor would become my brother-in-law. You even said that the Ghost Emperor would kill Yun Luofeng to avenge us. The Ghost Emperor will be here soon, and Yun Luofeng will pay for her mistake. Lin Ji's lips were deathly pale. He trembled a few times, but he could not make a single sound. All these years, he had given Lin Hao the greatest protection. As a result, Lin Hao did not know anything about the mainland and did not recognize the Ghost Emperor. In Lin Hao's mind, a powerful cultivator like the Ghost Emperor would definitely be surrounded by a group of people and would be incomparably glorious. Yun Xiao had come alone in silence. How could he be the famous Ghost Emperor? Yun Zhao's gaze gradually shifted away from Yun Luofeng and landed on Lin Hao's face. A powerful murderous intent radiated from his body, causing his aura to become incomparably cold. Being locked on by his aura, Lin Hao's body couldn't help but tremble. He subconsciously hid on Lin Ji's body. However, his mouth was still unforgiving, and he angrily said, You are merely the lover of that bitch Yun Luofeng. Yet you dare to bully the people of the medical city like this. When the Ghost Emperor arrives, it will be the day of your death. Pa. Lin Gu slapped Lin Hao's face, his voice trembling. Apologize. Father. Apologize to the Ghost Emperor. Originally, Lin Hao was still extremely angry because of his father's slap, but after hearing what his father said next, his gaze unwittingly shook, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Father, what did you just say? Ghost Emperor? Where is the Ghost Emperor? Lin Gu sighed heavily. At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. He regretted spoiling Lin Hao to such an extent. However, that masked man is the Ghost Emperor. Like a bolt out of the blue, Lin Hao's legs trembled and he instantly fell to the ground. His face, which had already turned pale due to excessive indulgence, became even paler at this moment. Father, you're joking with me, aren't you? The Ghost Emperor is my brother-in-law. How could he possibly be Yun Luofeng's lover? Chapter 655. Lin Gu stared at Lin Hao's pale face, gently closed his eyes, and sighed softly. Forget about Lin Hao. Even he could not believe what was happening before his eyes. Milk Tea's sharp eyes caught sight of Lin Yuting, who was trying to sneak away. She instantly jumped and charged towards Lin Yuting, her sharp claws biting her calf fiercely. Arg! Lin Yuting shrieked in pain. At that moment, everyone's eyes turned towards her. The entire place was abnormally silent. Under everyone's gaze, her lips trembled slightly, and she subconsciously took a few steps back. She didn't even have time to deal with her bleeding leg. Milk Tea raised her little head and glanced arrogantly at Lin Yuting. She then turned around and quickly returned to Yun Luofeng's side. Are you a disciple of Luofu? Lan Hong gently furrowed his brows and asked. Lin Yuting's expression froze. Her eyes flickered as she quickly tried to think of a way to leave this place. I seem to remember that based on your position in the Doctors' Association, you do not have the right to attend the meeting. I wonder who allowed you to enter. Lan Hong's gaze inadvertently swept across Hu Po's body, and the meaning in his eyes was clear. Thud. Hu Po saw that the situation was not looking good and knelt on the ground in fear. He trembled as he spoke. Elder Lan Hong, Master. It's my fault for allowing her to sneak in. I'll get someone to throw her out later. If Hu Po had said that Lin Yuting had bribed her, perhaps she would not have been able to find an excuse. However, in order to shirk responsibility, Hu Po had said that she had sneaked into the meeting. This had given Lin Yuting an opportunity. She gritted her teeth and knelt on the ground. Her eyes were filled with a pitiful look as she sobbed. Elder Lan Hong, Elder Ding Ling, this is all my fault. It has nothing to do with senior brother Hu Po. Hu Po stared at Lin Yuting in astonishment, as if he never thought that she would take all the blame. However, Lin Yuting's following words caused his expression to change. My heart aches for senior sister Yuting. She's such an outstanding woman. She shouldn't have ended up like this. Lin Yuting lowered her eyes and quickly crawled towards the Ghost Emperor. Lord Ghost Emperor, I beg you. Only you can save senior sister Yuting. Moreover, with senior sister Yuting's looks, she is not inferior to Yun Luofeng. After saying that, her voice paused for a moment before she continued. Besides that, Lin Hao had claimed that you were his brother-in-law. That was the Medicine City's own decision, and it has nothing to do with senior sister Yuting. Previously, the people from the Medicine City had even forced senior sister Yuting to seduce you. However, senior sister Yuting has always advocated mutual affection and would never do such a thing that is immoral. She's innocent. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips and looked at the woman who had crawled in front of Yun Shao with a smile that was not a smile. I wonder if you've heard of this saying? What? Lin Yuting was stunned. Grandma Wang sells melons and praises herself. Even if you want to sell yourself, you don't have to keep praising yourself. What nonsense are you talking about? Lin Yuting's face paled, and anger surged from her chest. She clenched her fists tightly. Yun Luofeng, how can a vicious and merciless woman like you be worthy of the Ghost Emperor? You are just jealous of senior sister Yuting. If she wanted to survive, the Ghost Emperor was her only hope. Hence, at this moment, Lin Yiting has lost her usual rationality and spoke without thinking. I thought that I've made myself clear enough. Yun Luofeng slowly left Yun Zhao's body and raised his brow evilly. He then smiled gently. Lin Yiting, even if you sell yourself off and praise yourself, you still can't sell yourself. Chapter 656. Lin Yiting? Upon hearing Yun Luofeng's words, the crowd was stunned as they stared unblinkingly at Lin Yiting. Miss Yun, are you sure you're not mistaken? Lan Hong stared blankly and smiled. I think she's called Gua something. She's not Lin Yiting. Besides, if she was Lin Yiting, she wouldn't have said such self-flattering words. Otherwise, wouldn't it be disgusting? Lan Hong wasn't speaking up for Lin Yiting. Instead, if a person could boast about herself in front of a man, how thick-skinned must she be? Wouldn't she be disgusted by such self-flattering words? Yun Luofeng, Lin Yiting bit her lip and said, Don't accuse me wrongly. I'm not senior sister Yiting at all. You're only doing this because you're jealous of senior sister Yiting. Even at a time like this, Lin Yiting still refused to admit her actions. After all, this mask of hers had been made by a cultivator 2 years ago. Unless there was a special method, it could not be removed. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Yun Luofeng was, he could not reveal her true face in front of everyone. In that moment, Lin Yiting finally caught Yun Zhao's attention. The man's gaze was cold and his face was expressionless. His deep black eyes stared coldly at Lin Yiting as if he was looking at a dead person. A powerful aura surged from the man's body. His slightly pursed lips formed a cold and hard angle as a vicious aura rose from his body. There was no wind, but his black robes fluttered. Lin Yiting swallowed her saliva as her eyes filled with fear. She stumbled back a few steps. All these years, if she had nowhere to vent her frustrations, she would use Guo Fulan's face to commit crimes. Anyway, in the end, Guo Fulan would bear all the notoriety, and she would still be the elegant and gentle Lin Yiting in the eyes of the world. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng pressed down on Yun Zhao's shoulder as the corners of his lips curled into an even more demonic angle. I'd like to handle this matter personally. The young girl's words caused the vicious aura from Yun Zhao's body to slowly disappear. His voice was as cold and hoarse as ever as he said, All right, if she wanted to shine brightly, so what if he was the man behind her back? For her, he was willing to hide all his brilliance. He only needed to silently accompany her, and that was enough. Lin Yiting, since you don't want to tell the truth, then I'll make you reveal your true colors. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a faint smile. He narrowed his eyes and gradually approached Lin Yiting. Lin Yiting's expression suddenly changed. There was a large crowd behind her, so she had nowhere to retreat to. Suddenly, a few silver needles appeared on the girl's fingertips. With a swoosh, they pierced through the air and pierced Lin Yiting's face. Lin Yiting screamed shrilly and hurriedly pulled out the silver needles from her face. Her hand was tightly covering her bleeding face as she trembled and stared at Yun Luofeng. You're not as outstanding as senior sister Yiting, and you don't even allow me to say it. I don't know what method you used to confuse the Ghost Emperor, but how can a woman like you, who delivered herself to the Ghost Emperor's side, be compared to a woman like senior sister Yiting who doesn't care about power? The entire square was silent. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Lin Yiting. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. It was as if they had seen something inconceivable. Chapter 657. What's wrong? Lin Yiting noticed the crowd's stares and subconsciously wiped her face. In that instant, she had accidentally pulled off a human skin mask. When she saw the human skin mask in her hand, Lin Yiting's shrill voice rang through the entire hall. How could this be? That powerful cultivator had clearly told her that she could only use the potion that he had given her to remove this mask. What on earth had Yun Luofeng done? At this moment, it was as if Lin Yiting had been stripped naked and all the flaws on her body were exposed to the sun. Hu Pe was so frightened that he immediately fainted, hoping to escape his master's rebuke. Unfortunately, he had obviously thought too much. Now, everyone's eyes were on Lin Yiting, including his master. No one had even spared him a second glance. Lin Yiting. She's actually Lin Yiting. I had originally thought that senior sister Yiting was gentle and elegant. I never thought that she would be this kind of person. I'm guessing that she has disguised herself as someone else. That's why she has unscrupulously revealed her true nature. Did you all hear what she had said just now? She actually claimed that she was extremely beautiful and had a good temperament. She even claimed that she wasn't the kind of person who would cling to the rich. She even narcissistically thought that Yun Luofeng was jealous of her. Stop talking. I'm about to vomit. She clearly wants to seduce the Ghost Emperor. She even pretends to be pure and says that she's not attached to power. The crowd's mockery caused Lin Yiting's face to turn as white as a sheet. She held a human skin mask in her hand and stood alone in the middle of the crowd, accepting everyone's criticism and humiliation. It was as if she had become incompatible with the entire world. Yun Luofeng. All of this was Yun Luofeng's fault. Suddenly, she raised her head and her venomous gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on Yun Luofeng. Lin Yiting, you rebellious daughter. Lin Gu had already rushed in front of her and slapped her across the face. He said angrily, "You were the one who said that you had the confidence to seduce the Ghost Emperor, yet you pushed all the blame onto me. If you hadn't said those words, would Hao and I have thought that way? You still dare to talk about me?" Lin Yiting sneered. She retracted her gaze from Yun Luofeng and stared coldly at Lin Gu. If it weren't for that good son of yours stirring up trouble everywhere, would he have attracted so much trouble? If not for her, I would still be the most outstanding disciple of the Doctors' Association, with a bright future ahead of me. But now, because of you, my life has been ruined. You. Lin Gu was so angry that he pointed at Lin Yiting. Don't forget, if it wasn't for me, you would have died long ago. How could you have the status you have today? Lin Yiting smiled coldly. Then I would rather die back then than suffer the humiliation I'm suffering now. Pa. Lin Gu slapped her again. This time, he used a lot of force, so much so that a trace of blood appeared on the corner of Lin Yiting's mouth. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and a ruthless glint flashed across her eyes. These 2 slaps are enough for me to repay you for taking me in. Next, try and hit me again. Lin Gu had just raised his hand when he met Lin Yiting's eyes, which were filled with hatred. His heart trembled involuntarily. His hand froze in midair, unable to swing down. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yiting turned to look at Yun Luofeng, her beautiful eyes filled with hatred. You've ruined my life, just like the medical city, the person who ruined your life. Yun Luofeng paused after saying this, then continued, Isn't that you? Chapter 658. The person who ruined your life, wasn't it you? This sentence caused Lin Yiting's heart to tremble. Suddenly, she laughed maniacally. Her laughter was filled with malevolence and madness. Yun Luofeng, what happened more than 10 years ago was indeed the medical city's fault. However, after so many years, why can't you let us go? Now, you're telling me that the person who ruined me was me? She stopped laughing and stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. No, the one who ruined me was the medical city and you. Boom. Suddenly, Yun Luofeng raised his leg and kicked Lin Yiting out of the way. Lin Yiting fell into the crowd and spat out a mouthful of blood. She glared venomously at Yun Luofeng. This kick, I am returning it to you on behalf of my second uncle. Bang. Yun Luofeng quickly arrived in front of Lin Yiting and raised his leg to stomp down fiercely. This stomp caused Lin Yiting's bones to break and fresh blood to gush out of her mouth. This kick, I am returning it to you on behalf of everyone in the Yun family. Another kick. This time, she kicked Lin Yiting's waist, sending her body flying a few meters away before she violently slammed into a pillar. This kick, I am doing it for myself. Yun Xiao is my man. You dare to peep at him. You deserve to die. The young girl raised her head slightly, her demonic eyes looking down at Yun Luofeng condescendingly. I have never allowed anyone to peep at my man. Even a single strand of hair on his body belongs to me. No one else can touch it. The young girl's domineering voice slowly rang throughout the venue. The Roaring Dragon mainland was a world where men were superior to women. Generally speaking, only men could declare their sovereignty over their women. There had never been a woman who could say such words in such a domineering manner. From head to toe, even a single strand of hair on his body belonged to her. How domineering must one be to be able to say such words? Yuan Zhao's grim eyes gradually softened, and the corners of his cold and stiff lips slowly curled into a shallow arc. His gaze remained fixed on Yun Luofeng. Within his pair of black eyes, the young girl's peerless and elegant figure was clearly reflected. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yiting chuckled. Her smile was filled with mockery and contempt. You underestimate the Ghost Emperor's position on this continent. Aside from me, there will definitely be other women. When that time comes, will you be able to stop so many women? Those who want to steal my man, I'll allow them to come. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. However, if one comes, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill both. I'll kill until no one dares to peep at him. Lin Yiting was stunned. Perhaps she had not expected Yun Luofeng to say such a thing. She hurriedly turned her gaze towards Yuan Zhao and asked in a trembling voice, You're just going to allow her to do this? Yuan Zhao's faint smile disappeared when he faced Lin Yiting, and his voice was cold and stern. I will bury her body. So what if she wanted to kill him? He would always follow behind her and bury her body. Puff. Lin Yiting almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and her lips trembled slightly. The Ghost Emperor. He really didn't like ordinary men. However, he, who had always been cold and heartless and had never been close to women, was now so tolerant towards a woman. Why was it that such a man's gaze was not on her? Lin Yiting's heart clenched fiercely due to jealousy. She clenched her fists tightly, and her nails dug deep into her palms. However, she did not feel it at all. Chapter 659. Ghost Emperor, your status is so noble. Why do you let her do everything? Lin Yiting's heart was still filled with unwillingness. She clenched her teeth and asked this question. Everyone could see that the Ghost Emperor was at a disadvantage in front of Yun Luofeng. For this woman, he lowered all his qualifications and gave her the greatest indulgence. You don't have the right to know. The man's voice was cold and heartless. Aside from Yun Luofeng, the other women didn't even have the right to look at him, let alone answer him. After saying this, the man's dark eyes stared deeply at Yun Luofeng. Should I kill them now? He said it very simply, as if killing was as easy as eating and drinking. Wait a little longer. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of her lips and said with a light smile, All right. The man's words were concise and comprehensive. You won't ask for the reason? Yun Luofeng gently raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. The man paused and said, You have your reasons for every decision you make. I only need to trust you. He trusted her without a reason. Even if one day she turned her sword against him, he would still choose to trust her. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of her lips. The people from the medical pavilion sent news that second uncle is already on his way here. According to the route, he will arrive today. When that time comes, I want to give the people of the medical city a surprise. She deliberately lowered her voice when she said this so that only Yuan Zhao, who was next to her, could hear it. Yuan Zhao glanced at Yun Luofeng, then turned and walked out of the venue. Not long after, the cold figure once again flashed in from outside the venue. Compared to when he had left, the man now carried a chair in his left hand and a pot of grapes in his right. He strode in front of Yun Luofeng. Where did you get this chair and fruit? Yun Luofeng was startled and asked. The man replied seriously, I stole them. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched slightly as she looked at the man's matter-of-fact expression. Outside, this man was always so overbearing. Yun Luofeng straightened her long skirt and sat down. Her body leaned lazily against the back of the chair. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the crowd from the medicine city. Lin Gu, do you know why I allowed you to come to this venue today? Lin Gu was stunned. Even though the Doctors' Association did not completely restrict his freedom, it would not be so easy for him to enter the venue. Therefore, Lin Gu had been wondering why he could enter the venue so easily. Could it be related to Yun Luofeng?
Because
Yun Luofeng paused. His slightly narrowed eyes emitted an evil light. Today, I have a surprise for your medical city. Lin Yiting's body trembled and she lowered her head. She couldn't even protect herself now, so naturally, she couldn't care less about the medical city. Furthermore, compared to her hatred towards Yun Luofeng, she hated the medicine city the most. If Lin Gu had not spoiled and indulged Lin Hao, she would not have fallen to such a state. Hence, why would she worry about the medical city? Yun Luofeng. Lin Hao jumped up once again and roared angrily. You are a woman who is inferior to even a brothel girl. If you hadn't seduced the elders of the Doctors' Association, do you think you have the qualifications to step into this kind of place? You and Yun Qingya are both not good people. Yun Zhao's eyes darkened as she coldly glanced at Lin Hao. With just a single glance, Lin Hao felt a powerful force explode against his chest. His body was instantly sent flying dozens of meters away, fiercely crashing into the crowd. Chapter 660. Just as Lin Hao was about to crawl up from the ground, the black-clothed cold man had already appeared in front of him. At this moment, Lin Hao could clearly feel the hostility coming from the man's body. The man's hand tightly grabbed onto Lin Hao's sleeves and fiercely smashed his body onto the ground. With a loud bang, a deep crater appeared on the ground. It could be seen how much strength the man had used. In the deep pit, Lin Hao kept vomiting blood. He tried to get up, but as he moved, his entire body was in pain, as if all the bones in his body had been broken. Father, save me. His voice was trembling and pleading. It was like a hand that fiercely pinched Lin Ji's heart. Enough. Lin Gu clenched his fists tightly and closed his eyes. The moment he opened them, a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. If you want to hit me, hit me. Power is innocent. Even just now, Lin Gu still hated Lin Hao for offending the Ghost Emperor due to his ignorance. However, seeing his beloved son suffer such a serious injury, how could his heart not ache? He would rather be the one being tortured by the Ghost Emperor than watch his own son get injured. Innocent? Yun Luofeng sneered and said mockingly, back then, he competed with my second uncle on the arena. It was precisely because my second uncle defeated him that he became angry out of humiliation and sent an expert from the medical city to kill my second uncle. Is this considered innocent? This is all my. Lin Gu opened his mouth and said. He wanted to bear all the blame for Lin Hao, but before he could finish his words, Lin Hao's crazed voice came from the deep pit. Yun Qingya deserved to die. As the young city lord of the medical city, he is just the young master of a general's mansion. Thus, I competed with him because I thought highly of him. What right does he have to defeat me? He should just stand there and let me beat him up. Lin Hao gritted his teeth. All these years, whenever he heard Yun Qingya's name, he would think of that match more than 10 years ago. That was also the greatest humiliation he had ever suffered in his life. Humph! Lin Hao snorted coldly and said mockingly, the people of the medical city all know how to let me win in the arena. Only Yun Qingya is extremely stupid. Fortunately, that bastard paid the price for his mistake. Even if you take revenge on my medical city, that bastard Yun Qingya won't be able to come back to life. Ha ha! He laughed crazily, as if he wanted to vent all the anger he had accumulated over the years. However, at this moment, a cold voice tore through the sky and entered everyone's ears. Are you sure I can't come back to life? The man's cold voice to Lin Hao was a nightmare for more than 10 years. Therefore, after hearing these words, his smile suddenly froze. He raised his head mechanically and looked stiffly at the sky. In the azure sky, the man stood with his hands behind his back. His green robe fluttered in the wind, and he was as elegant as a song. His jet-black hair fluttered in the wind, and a sarcastic smile appeared on his handsome face. Rumble. In an instant, Lin Hao's mind was in chaos. It was as if countless bolts of lightning were exploding in his head. He stared blankly at the elegant and refined man in the air. He was so shocked that he could not speak. After a long while, he finally reacted. His face turned from pale to angry as he roared angrily, Yun Qingya, impossible! Why are you still alive? you beast. More than 10 years ago, this bastard had clearly died at the hands of the experts of the medical city. Why was he still alive? Chapter 661. In the sky, the man smiled indifferently. His cold gaze gradually swept past Lin Hao's crazed face and landed on Yun Luofeng. At this moment, his gaze became gentle, as if the sun was bathing her body. Little Fenger, I'm back. I'm back. The man's voice moved Yun Luofeng. The corner of her mouth moved as she stared deeply at the man in the sky and said, Second uncle, should I congratulate you for breaking through to the heavenly spirit realm? Flying in the air, heavenly spirit realm. Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, everyone came to a realization. This Yun Qingya of the Yun family had actually broken through to the heavenly spirit realm? Lin Ji's expression was very ugly. He took a few steps back and fell to the ground. His face was filled with despair and ashen. I was lucky to obtain the inheritance of an expert, which is why I was able to break through so quickly. The reason why the Forest of No Return was so dangerous, yet there were still many people who wanted to go there, was because there were countless miracles in the Forest of No Return. Once one returned alive from the Forest of No Return, they would definitely be able to obtain an extremely powerful strength. This was also the reason why many people wanted to go to the Forest of No Return to try their luck. Of course, very few people could return alive, and most of them were buried in the forest. Little Fenger, just leave the matters of the medical city to me. Yun Qingya smiled faintly. I want to take revenge for what happened back then. 10 years. Who knew what kind of life he had lived for the past 10 years? And the one who brought him all of this was the medical city. Yun Qingya's gaze slowly focused on the people of the medical city. His feet gradually walked downwards, and the moment his feet touched the ground, it was as if countless green lotuses bloomed beneath his feet. Do you still remember what you said to me 10 years ago? Yun Qingya still had a smile on her face, but that smile made one's hair stand on end. 10 years ago, you told me that I was a weak expert in this world. My family background could not be compared to the medical city, so even if I died, I deserved it. With every step Yun Qingya took, Lin Ji's heart trembled a little. He clenched his fists tightly and looked at the elegant man who was slowly walking down from the sky in fear. You even said that it is my honor to have Lin Hao spar with me, and I should stand on the stage and allow him to beat me without retaliating. Since I've retaliated, I need to accept the severe punishment from the medical city. 10 years ago, he had used all his strength to escape the pursuit. But because of this, he had to hide in a secret chamber for more than 10 years. How cruel was this for a young man? Now, our roles have been reversed. The person who will be killed will be the medicine city. Yun Qingya slightly raised her clear and cold eyes, and the smile on her face slowly disappeared. Oh right, there's also the expert from the medical city who once chased after me. I've never forgotten the faces of those people in the past 10 years. Ringo opened his mouth, but found that his throat was so dry that he could not make a sound. Only now did he regret it. If they had not indulged Lin Hao since young, the medical city would not have ended up like this. Father, Lin Hao's voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. Why? Why didn't you tell me that you were still alive? Why? Lin Hao laughed bitterly and shook his head. I just didn't want you to be agitated, so I hid it from you. Hearing this, Lin Hao became even angrier. Then why didn't you kill him back then? Why didn't you destroy the Yun family? If you had destroyed everyone in the Yun family, how could so many things have happened now? Chapter 662. Obviously, Lin Hao had already placed all the blame on Lin Gu. However, he did not reflect on his own actions at all. Lin Ji's heart became more and more desperate. He did not expect that his son would blame him at a time like this. Heh. Lin Yiting sneered and said mockingly, this is the son you've doted on for so many years. Not only does he like to cause trouble, he also likes to shirk responsibility at a time like this. If it wasn't for him, how could so many things have happened? Shut up. Lin Gu glared fiercely at Lin Yiting, his face sinister. Who do you think you are? Don't forget, just now, You disguised yourself as someone else and praised yourself in front of the ghost emperor, trying to seduce him. Who am I doing this for? Lin Yiting's heart was torn apart, and the expression on her face became colder and colder. If it wasn't for the medical city, I would have died a long time ago. Why would I need to seduce the ghost emperor? Everything I did was for you guys, but in the end, you say that I'm not a good person? Lin Gu closed his eyes in pain. Even if his son wasn't, he was still the most important person in his life. How could he ignore him? Yun Qingya, if you want to kill me, then kill me. Let Howard go. He opened his eyes and looked straight at Yun Qingya. His eyes were filled with the determination to face death calmly. Yun Qingya sneered. Do you think I will let anyone in the medical city go? As soon as he finished speaking, his voice paused for a moment before he continued. Back then, I will not let go of anyone who hurt me. Lin Ji's face gradually darkened. If he could start over, he would never indulge Lin Hao like before, because conniving was harming him. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Lin Gu laughed wildly. As he laughed, tears flowed down his cheeks. Yun Qingya, you've won, and I've lost miserably. However, even if I have to risk my life, I will send Howard out. I won't let him die in this place. With a swoosh, Lin Gu quickly rushed towards Lin Hao and lifted him up from the deep pit. Then, all the spiritual power gathered in his arm, and he forcefully threw Lin Hao's body out. Howard, hurry up and leave. Don't take revenge. Father. Lin Hao's voice was mournful as he extended his hand towards Lin Gu, who was on the ground. His face was filled with pain. Perhaps, at this moment, he finally felt some regret in his heart. At the same time, an eagle flew over, and Lin Hao's body landed steadily on its back. Master! Lin Ruobai's heart tightened as he hurriedly looked at Yun Luofeng. Lin Ruobai nodded. Since his master had said so, Yun Qingya, the Yun, Luobai, Yun, Gu Yun, Luo, Yun, Gu Yun, and Lin Ruobai nodded. Since his master had said so, it proved that Yun Qingya could solve this matter with her own strength. Gu Yun, Gu Yun, Gu, the Yun, Yun. Yun Qingya looked at the eagle that was flying into the distance and said calmly, with the speed of this eagle, if I can finish off Lin Gu in one move, I should be able to catch up. Lin Ji's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, Yun Qingya, as a heavenly spirit realm cultivator, do you think you can finish me off in one move? Even if my strength is inferior to yours, I can still stop you for a moment. Chapter 663. Just as he finished speaking, the cold and elegant man had already flashed in front of him. A sharp aura surged from his body, and his palm brought with it a gust of green wind as it landed on Lin Ji's body. Lin Ji's mocking expression suddenly changed. His body felt as if it had been smashed by a huge mountain as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could react, Yun Qingya had already risen into the sky and was chasing after Lin Hao at an extremely fast speed. No. Lin Ji's eyes were about to split open as he clutched his injured chest and watched helplessly as Yun Qingya caught up to Lin Hao. A green long sword extended out from behind Lin Hao and slashed down with a man's powerful strength. Then, Lin Hao, along with Yu Stongying, were cut into two halves by this slash. The color of blood dyed the entire sky red. Howard, looking at his body that was falling from the sky, Lin Ji's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted at the top of his lungs. There was nothing more painful than watching one's own son die with one's own eyes. Lin Ji's body trembled as he stared angrily at Yun Qingya. Yun Qingya, don't you think you're being too cruel? Cruel? Yun Qingya smiled faintly. Compared to what your medical city has done before, what is this? Lin Ji's entire body trembled. Suddenly, he rushed towards Yun Qingya as if he didn't care about his life. His eyes were filled with bone-piercing hatred. Yun Qingya, I will perish together with you. Even if he died, he would drag Yun Qingya down with him. He wanted to take revenge for his son, Pucci. Just as Lin Gu arrived in front of Yun Qingya, a long sword pierced into his chest. His body trembled as he looked at the sword in front of his chest in astonishment. Then, he looked at the man in front of him, who was as elegant as a chrysanthemum. Yun Qingya, you will definitely get your retribution. As the last word fell, his body fell from the sky, shattering into pieces. His death was extremely miserable. After taking care of Lin Gu and his son, it will be the turn of those who chased after me back then. Yun Qingya's lips curled up as she looked around the entire venue with a cold gaze. Her voice sounded indifferently. At the venue, the people from the medicine city shrunk their necks, trying their best to reduce their presence. However, Yun Qingya's gaze was like a sword that pierced into their bodies, leaving them nowhere to hide. I remember that the few of you chased after me back then. Yun Qingya's gaze gradually stopped on a few of them. She smiled faintly and said, "What? You're pretending not to know me this time?" Those people trembled in fear and knelt on the ground with a plop. "Sir Qingya, we were just following orders. It was Lin Gu who forced us to kill you. Please let us go. We will definitely turn over a new leaf." A faint smile appeared on Yun Qingya's face. "Is that so? Then why do I remember that you were very excited when you humiliated me? You also said that a person like me would never be able to make it big in my lifetime." Hearing Yun Qingya's words, that person's body trembled. His heart was filled with regret. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have said such humiliating words back then. "The medical city will be eliminated, and all of you will die." Just as everyone was thinking of countermeasures, the man's voice rang out again. It was so cold that it made them tremble even more. "Second uncle's matter has finally been resolved." Yun Luofeng held the grape that Yun Xiao brought to his lips and lazily leaned back in his chair. "Yun Xiao, we should take care of our own matters next. What do you think?" Chapter 664. Yun Xiao stared blankly at the young girl's devilish smile. He then replied honestly, "I had arrived a few days late because I had discovered that person's tracks." He thought that Yun Luofeng was reprimanding him for his late arrival. Hence, he did not wait for her to interrogate him and told the truth. "That person? My mother." Even though Yun Xiao had never said anything, Yun Luofeng could sense that he held a grudge against his mother. That year, after his mother had left the Xiao family, her whereabouts were unknown and she had never looked for him. As a result, he had lived alone in the forest of no return for a few years. Even though he had missed his mother in the beginning, in the end, after experiencing countless narrow escapes from death, even the most intense longing had turned into resentment. Even so, he still wanted to find her. At the very least, he wanted to understand why she had never looked for him after all these years. "Yun Xiao, I didn't ask you where you've been these past few days." Yun Luofeng stepped out of her thoughts and narrowed her eyes. She slowly rose to her feet and approached the man in front of her. The corners of her lips gradually curled into an angle. "I just feel that you've been trained by me for so long. It's time to verify the results." Even though the man in front of her was wearing a mask, Yun Luofeng could still sense the change in his aura at this very moment. "As long as you're willing, I can do anything for you, including warming your bed." The man's eyes were filled with sincerity as he stared quietly at the young girl standing in front of him. "Warming my bed?" Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lips. "When you say warming my bed, do you mean warming my blankets, or do you mean something else?" When they had first met, she had asked this man to warm her bed. In the end, he had really done it for her. At that time, she had felt as if she had been struck by lightning that such a naive man could exist in this world. She never thought that the words "warming my bed" would come out of his mouth once again. Yun Luofeng had just finished speaking when she suddenly fell into an embrace. The man's low and hoarse voice rang out next to her ear. "When I say warming my bed, you'll know what I mean in a moment." Hearing this, Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes and a demonic light flashed across her eyes. The corners of her lips gently curled into an angle. "Yun Xiao, I haven't seen you for a year, and you've actually learned to be two-faced?" She placed her hand gently on Yun Xiao's chest and pushed his body away slightly. Her slender fingers gently hooked the man's chin, and she said with a faint smile, "But I like it." These 3 words, "I like," instantly caused Yun Zhao's pupils to contract and her breathing to unconsciously heat up. "There are too many people here. Let's go back to the room and talk." The young girl's smile was very beautiful, so beautiful that it made people's hearts beat faster. Especially, after she finished speaking, she hooked her finger at the man. This seductive action, in an instant, could hook the soul of others. Yun Qingya was already used to her niece's behavior, so she didn't have any expression on her face as she continued to deal with the people from the medical city. However, those who didn't understand Yun Luofeng, after hearing the conversation between her and Yun Xiao, couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Some of the men even looked at Yun Xiao with envious gazes. How they wished that they were the ones being treated like this. Lin Yiting was mad with jealousy. She clenched her fists tightly and stared at Yun Luofeng with vicious eyes. Unfortunately, she couldn't even protect herself now, so how could she talk about taking revenge? Chapter 665. Inside the room, the dim yellow candlelight enveloped the entire room. It flickered between bright and dark, contrasting the handsome man and beautiful woman standing in front of the window. The scene of the two of them fighting side by side was like a pair of immortal lovers, holding hands as they watched the prosperity of the mortal world. Yun Xiao, the young girl's thin lips gently opened as she softly called out the man's name. However, as soon as she said those 2 words, the man suddenly leaned forward and kissed her lips. The man's kiss was domineering. His manly scent, mixed with a faint fragrance, burrowed into the tip of her nose. Yun Luofeng gently narrowed his eyes, seriously sizing up the man who was kissing her. She didn't know how many times this man had taken the initiative to kiss her. She had also gotten used to it from her initial astonishment. However, compared to being pressed down, she preferred to press down on this man. Bai Su is in danger. The man released the young girl he had pressed against the wall and said seriously. Yun Luofeng smiled. And then? "You, stay away from him." "Yun Xiao, are you jealous?" Looking at the man's slightly awkward yet domineering expression, the smile on Yun Luofeng's face deepened. His eyes looked at the man in front of him with a faint smile. Yun Xiao nodded very honestly. "Yes." He paused, then added, "Also, I'm afraid he'll hurt you." "Yun Xiao, don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes again and said with an evil smile, "As for that Bai Su, I'll also stay away from him. That man gives me a very uncomfortable feeling." The feeling Bai Su gave her was different from the one Yun Xiao gave her. By Yun Zhao's side, she was very relaxed. Even if she was completely unguarded, she knew that this man would protect her at any time of danger. Bai Su was different. As long as Bai Su appeared in front of her, she would feel a dangerous aura. That kind of aura made her raise her guard at any time, not daring to relax even a little. "That's right." She seemed to remember something and continued to say, "Tell me about your mother's situation first." Yun Xiao fell silent. After a long while, he then said, "She is at the other end of the Forest of No Return." The Forest of No Return traversed the entire continent. The place where Yun Luofeng lived was on the east side of the Forest of No Return. As for what lay on the west side, because one had to pass through the entire Forest of No Return, no one knew. "Yun Xiao, if you want to find your mother, I will accompany you." Yun Luofeng raised his eyes and stared at the man standing in front of him. "All right." Yun Xiao gently pursed his thin lips. The young girl's figure was reflected in his deep eyes. "I haven't seen her for many years and I don't understand how she is now," but the look in his eyes became exceptionally firm at this moment. "No matter what happens, I will stand by your side, even if you go against the heavens." Yun Zhao's voice paused for a moment as he stared deeply at Yun Luofeng. "If you go against the heavens, then the heavens will be my enemy." Even if it meant risking his life, he would protect the person she loved. Her enemies, he would also risk his life to eradicate. "Yun Xiao." Yun Luofeng suddenly took 2 steps forward and pressed down on Yun Zhao's shoulder tightly. He then pushed his body towards the ground and flipped himself over. "Why don't we dual cultivate?" How about that? With a gentle wave of her hand, the man's clothes were stripped off. Instantly, that alluring eight-pack was reflected in the young girl's eyes. Chapter 666. These two words were the most sensitive to little Amo. He, who had been weeding and watering Yun Luofeng's herb field, immediately jumped up, his large bright eyes filled with excitement. Master, you finally thought it through. It really wasn't easy. Little Amo was so excited that he almost cried. He felt as if the clouds had parted to see the moon. As long as his master and Yuan Shao dual cultivated, then his master's cultivation would increase by a lot, and the time before he could leave the divine grimoire space would also increase. When Yun Luofeng finished speaking, Yuan Shao tightly grabbed her arm and pressed the girl who had been riding on him to the ground. Perhaps he was afraid that Yun Luofeng's head would hit the ground in the moment of the pressure, so he subconsciously held the back of her head with his hand to prevent the girl from being hit. After dual cultivation, you have to be responsible for me? Yun Luofeng was stunned and asked how? Get married. What a man wanted was very simple. Since they had already decided to dual cultivate, they had to get married. You can't be a hooligan. He paused for a moment, then continued. Yun Luofeng's voice suddenly disappeared. After a long time, she finally found her voice. Where did you hear the words hooligan? As the saying goes, love without the goal of marriage is hooligan. Now, this guy must have heard this phrase from somewhere and decided that she was a hooligan? Even though she had indeed been hooligan to Yuan Shao, your grandfather said so. The man had always been very honest in front of Yun Luofeng, so he didn't hesitate to sell out the old man. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched. Stay away from that old man in the future. In case he leads you astray, you want to be a hooligan? Yuan Shao lowered his head to look at the girl under him. You've already eaten me dry. I belong to you for the rest of my life. You can't chase me away. You can't beat me away. I will pester you to death. After saying this, he kissed the girl's lips forcefully, as if he wanted to vent all the longing he had for the past few days through a China kiss. No one knew how he had spent his time in the secret realm. Even the 7 years he spent in the forest of no return couldn't compare to this 1 year. The two of them had unknowingly taken off their clothes, and Yuan Shao was afraid that the ground would be too cold, so he moved the young lady onto the bed. In this spacious bed, the two of them faced each other. Yuan Zhao's movements were a little jerky, but it made him seem even more innocent. However, just as the two of them were planning to take the next step, a bloody smell suddenly entered their nostrils, causing Yuan Zhao's expression to change abruptly. Are you hurt? He couldn't care less about the most primitive desires in his heart. He hurriedly pressed down on Yun Luofeng's shoulder and anxiously scanned her body. When he saw the pool of blood on her lower body, the man's expression suddenly froze. At this moment, an almost imperceptible trace of awkwardness flashed across his handsome face. Of course, Yun Luofeng was even more embarrassed. Her monthly period was always punctual, but this time, it was about 10 days early, which caught her off guard. Suddenly, as if she had remembered something, she raised her head and fixed her gaze on the man. Yuan Shao, do you know what this is? Under Yun Luofeng's gaze, Yuan Shao slowly nodded. Back in the Yun family, in order to make it easier for me to take care of you, I had looked up some books on women. Those books said that after a woman's period comes, she needs to use ginger tea to warm her stomach, so I remembered it. Chapter 667. No, this isn't right. Suddenly, Little Mo's panicked voice came from Yun Luofeng's soul. Because Master is a virtual spirit body, your period will definitely come on time. There can't be any deviation, especially when Master and Yuan Shao are dual cultivating. This is too much of a coincidence. This isn't right. Yun Luofeng was startled and frowned slightly. She suddenly looked up at Yuan Shao and said, Yuan Shao, wait for me for a moment. After saying this, she closed her eyes and let her consciousness enter the divine grimoire space. The first thing he saw was a flustered little Amo. The little guy was holding a book in his hand, and he seemed to be searching for something. Little Amo, what's going on? Yun Luofeng frowned and asked, I'm not sure. I'm looking for an answer now. Little Emo bit his lips. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. I found it. I know the reason. Little Emo stood up from the ground and kept the ancient book in his hand. He looked up at Yun Luofeng with his big, bright eyes. This ancient book says that when a virtual spirit body and a spiritual body dual cultivate, a large amount of power will surge into the body. If the cultivator's power is too low, his body will explode and he will die. Therefore, only when the virtual spirit body breaks through to the venerable spirit body can they dual cultivate. Yun Luofeng smiled. His smile was evil, and it made Little Mo's hair stand on end. Master. Little Emo gulped and took a few steps back. Little Emo, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Yun Luofeng took a few steps closer to Little Emo. His body exuded a dangerous aura. Little Emo wanted to cry. I don't know either. I've forgotten many things. I didn't know this would happen. Then tell me, when I was in the Shao family, I saw Yun Shao naked. Why didn't this happen? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and continued to ask. That's probably because Master didn't feel lust then. This time, you felt lust, and the Encyclopedia of Medicine sensed it. That's why your period came early. Little Mo's big bright eyes were full of fear. Master, I really don't know anything. I'm innocent. At this point, Little Mo's heart was filled with regret. Just as the two of them were about to successfully dual cultivate, something like this happened. What book did you just open? Yun Luofeng asked with an evil smile. This is an ancient book. Written on it are some things that are unknown to the people of the continent. Among them are also records of medical books. Little Emo replied weakly. Now, he would answer whatever Yun Luofeng asked. He did not dare to go against him at all. Memorize that ancient book within 3 days, Yun Luofeng said indifferently as he raised his eyes. What? Little Emo was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Master, you're being too cruel to me. I hate reading books the most. He had stayed in the divine grimoire space for so many years, but he still hadn't memorized that ancient book. It was clear how much he hated memorizing books. If he hadn't slacked off, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. Do you choose to endorse him or become Little White's wife? Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Little Emo. His voice was threatening. Little Emo pouted and looked pitifully at Yun Luofeng. Can I choose neither? Chapter 668. Yun Luofeng gently raised an eyebrow and looked at Xiaomo with a smile. What do you think? These 3 words caused Xiaomo to look even more aggrieved. His resentful eyes stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. If anyone who was unaware of the situation were to see this, they would certainly think that Yun Luofeng had done something worse than an animal to him. That, Xiaomo replied pitifully, can you give me half a month's time? 3 days is too short. In that instant, he had made his decision. He would rather memorize books than become Xiao Bai's wife. Besides, he was a man. How could he marry a little girl? All right. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and smiled evilly. If you can't memorize this ancient book in half a month's time, I will immediately betroth you to Xiao Bai. Hearing this, Xiaomo immediately jumped to his feet. His delicate, jade-like features were filled with determination. Master, don't worry. I will memorize the contents of this ancient book. What a joke. That little girl, Xiao Bai, is much more terrifying than memorizing books. How could he possibly disobey Yun Luofeng's orders? Just then, Yun Luofeng sensed a ripple in the space outside and a cold light flashed across his eyes. It seems that someone has barged in. Then, he hurriedly sent his consciousness out of the divine grimoire space. In an elegant room, the young girl, who had been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. In that instant, a familiar face was reflected in her eyes, causing her pupils to shrink abruptly. The night breeze blew past and his black robes fluttered. The man stood silently under the moonlight, displaying a grim and murderous aura. The aura around his body was swift and fierce and filled with a vicious aura. At this moment, the man in front of Yun Shao noticed that Yun Luofeng had already opened his eyes. His handsome, jade-like face curled into a demonic smile. That smile may have been very beautiful, but it caused Yun Luofeng's heart to surge with anger. Bai Su, what are you doing here? Her eyes were cold and gloomy as she climbed out of bed. Yun Luofeng then realized that she had unknowingly put on her clothes. The man's smile deepened when he heard the young girl's eerie voice. Of course. To marry you. To marry you, of course. These words completely aroused the anger in Yun Zhao's heart. His black eyes grew even colder and colder as his deep and hoarse voice rang out in Yun Luofeng's ear. Leave it to me. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded lightly. She had great confidence in Yun Zhao's strength. Yun Zhao's cold gaze turned towards Bai Su as his voice contained a strong murderous intent. Get out. The man's style had always been extremely cold when it came to talking to unimportant people. He would never waste his breath to say an extra word. Bai Su waved the fan in his hand and smiled evilly. I must have that girl, Yun Luofeng. If you stop me, I can only kill you. Loser. Yun Zhao's voice was as cold and callous as ever, but it was able to pierce deeply into one's heart. More than a year ago, in the flowing gold nation, Bai Su had been defeated by him. Now, if he wasn't defeated, then what was he? Sure enough, Bai Su's eyes sank when she heard the man's words. She then replied icily, I may not have been able to defeat you in the past, but that doesn't mean that I'm no match for you now. If you have the ability, come at me and let's have a showdown. He then turned around and walked out of the door. Before he left, Bai Su turned around and looked at Yun Luofeng. She then smiled mysteriously and maliciously. As long as I kill your man, you will belong to me from now on. Hence, after a while, you will belong to the Bai family. Chapter 669. Faced with Bai Su's demonic yet confident features, Yun Luofeng curled his lips into a smile. You're no match for Yun Zhao. Bai Su's eyes darkened. You have that much confidence in him? That's right. Why? Because he's my man. Because he is my man, and I will always believe in my man. Perhaps it was because of Yun Luofeng's words that Yun Zhao's malevolence was no longer as strong as it had been before. The coldness in his black eyes gradually faded, and the corners of his lips slowly curled into a small angle. Wait for me. After he finished speaking, he walked into the night. His black robe gradually became one with the night, and he disappeared from Yun Luofeng's line of sight. The night was silent. In the overgrown forest, Yun Zhao paused in his steps and turned coldly towards Bai Su. This should be about the end. Heh. Bai Su laughed mockingly. May I ask, why did you leave the Doctors' Association so far away? Because. Yun Zhao's voice was low and his eyes were cold. I'm afraid that if I use too much power, I will accidentally hurt her who is nearby. His power exists to protect her, not to hurt her. Yun Zhao, Bai Su smiled. I really want to know just how powerful you are. I wonder if I'll be able to experience your true power today. Yun Zhao did not speak and only used his power to answer Bai Su. Suddenly, a powerful energy surged from his body and even the sky was covered by dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. His black robes fluttered under the night sky, accentuating the man's aura with a cold and murderous aura. It was a suffocating aura. Bai Su's expression gradually turned serious and his demonic eyes stared deeply at the man. So, this is the Ghost Emperor's true power. Since that's the case, I must have a good fight with you today. Once he had spoken, an aura rose from Bai Su's body as well. Under the envelopment of that aura, a strong wind rose and the leaves rustled loudly. Boom! The two of them launched their attacks at the same time. A powerful force spread out from their bodies, and the entire forest was flattened in an instant. Bai Su took a few steps back, and a trickle of blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. He raised his brows and stared coldly at the black-robed man. I, Bai Su, do not admire many people in my life. You, Ghost Emperor, are one of them. Bai Su wiped the blood from the corner of her lips and laughed softly. Unfortunately, we are rivals in love. Love rival? Yun Zhao glanced at him coldly. You don't have the qualifications. In reality, Bai Su did not like Yun Luofeng. He only wanted to pull her into the Bai family. This was something that anyone could see. When Bai Su heard Yun Zhao's merciless words, he narrowed his eyes and a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. Whether I'm qualified or not, you'll know in the future. Today, aside from looking for her, I've come here for another reason. I want to test your current power, and now, I've already sensed your true power. Bai Su gently curled the corners of his lips. Perhaps, the two of us will become archenemies and the winner will get her. Boom. The aura from Yun Zhao's body grew thicker and thicker. Like a great mountain, it pressed down from all directions. The entire sky was now filled with darkness, and it was so heavy that it made it difficult for one to breathe. Chapter 670. You won't have a chance to win. Yun Xiao slowly approached Bai Su, and a long sword had appeared in his hand. A cold and grim aura surged from the blade of the sword, causing one to tremble in fear. Ghost Emperor. Bai Su straightened his body and leaned lazily against a large rock behind him. He stared at Yun Xiao fearlessly. You can't kill me. Bai Su's voice carried a hint of provocation as he sensed the man's murderous intent. I admit that I can't defeat you, but you can't kill me either. If I want to escape, I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop me. Yun Xiao paused in his tracks as his grim, black eyes stared icily at Bai Su. The murderous intent on his body did not diminish. Instead, it increased. I won't let anyone threaten her. I've said it before, you can't kill me. Bai Su repeated himself once again. The man's black robes fluttered wildly amidst the wild winds. His aura increased abruptly, and countless black flames seemed to form around his body as he charged towards Bai Su. Even if I can't kill you, I can make it so that you won't be able to appear by her side. Boom. The flames were like hands baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they quickly engulfed Bai Su. However, the flames soon exploded and Bai Su's wretched figure appeared under the dusky sky. At this moment, Bai Su's face was slightly pale. His handsome features were shrouded in a layer of evil and cold light. His crescent-colored robes were in tatters, and he no longer had his previous threatening air of nobility. Suddenly, he laughed softly. His laughter was eerie and extremely terrifying. Ghost Emperor, I'll get what I want even if I have to risk my life. Bang! Just as Bai Su had spoken, a hole suddenly exploded under his feet and his entire body fell into the hole. However, just as he fell into the hole, the ground which had been blasted away returned to its original state as if nothing had happened at all. Yun Zhao's face remained cold and grim as he faced everything before him as if he had already predicted everything. Master. Qin Yuan slowly descended from the sky and stood behind Yun Xiao. He cupped his fists respectfully and said, Should I dig 3 feet into the ground and dig him out? There's no need. Yun Zhao's eyes were extremely cold. He's already left. Qin Yuan lowered his head. What if Bai Su? He was burned by the raging fire. He won't be able to recover for at least 2 years. Later, immediately bring the troops to wipe out the Bai family. I want to force him out. He couldn't kill him, but he could prevent him from appearing by Yun Luofeng's side. In these 2 years, he didn't even have time to recuperate. How could he find trouble with Yun Luofeng? Cough. Yun Xiao coughed as she clutched her chest tightly with her hand. Her tightly furrowed brows showed that she was in pain. Even if he obtained the Netherworld fire, if he used it, there would still be a very strong side effect. However, only the power of the Netherworld fire could allow Bai Su to recover from his injuries in 2 years. Master! Qin Yuan turned pale with fright and called out anxiously. It's all right. Yun Xiao gradually lowered her hand from her chest and replied expressionlessly, Don't let her know about this. Qin Yuan's heart was moved. For the sake of the mistress, Master had really let go of everything. Not only had he followed her willingly, he couldn't even bear to let her know about his injuries. Chapter 671. Perhaps, in this world, only the mistress could subdue the master. Under the dark night, a piercing sound broke the silence of the night. In the air, the woman in red was carrying a ragged little boy in her arms as she quickly ran towards a nearby mountain path. The little boy was dressed in a loose robe that did not match his small body. His long hair was longer than his body and reached his ankles. He looked like he was carved from jade and was extremely adorable. Only his large eyes contained an evil and cold light, and he had a maturity that was beyond his age. Young master, we're already thousands of miles away from that place. The woman in red frowned slightly, and a look of worry flashed across her beautiful face. But, young master, you've been severely injured, which has caused your body to become like this. The boy lowered his eyes and looked at his little hands and feet. A cold light flashed across his eyes. The Ghost Emperor has caused me to become like this. One day, I'll seek revenge on him. However, the most important thing now is to find a place to heal. I'm afraid that I won't be able to recover without at least 2 years. Even though the little boy's voice was soft and adorable, his tone was serious. He raised his brows slightly and turned to the woman in red next to him. Jinyu, bring me away from this place immediately. Based on the Ghost Emperor's power, he'll probably find us in no time. Yes, young master. Jinyu's face was filled with respect. However, there was reverence in her eyes when she looked at the man. During this period of time, there was an upheaval on the mainland. It was said that the Bai family had provoked the Ghost Emperor for some unknown reason. As a result, the Ghost Emperor's subordinates immediately went to flatten the entire Bai family. That day, there were endless cries of grief and blood flowed like a river in the Bai family. Even so, as the young master of the Bai family, Bai Su, did not show himself. As a result, no one knew where he had gone. At this moment, Jinyu slowly walked into a cave. She was dressed in red and was extremely gorgeous. Her beauty was incomparable. Her beauty was not the same as Feng Yu's graceful beauty. She also did not have the coquettish charm of the owner of the bamboo building, Chunyang. Instead, there was a sense of aloofness and gentleness on her beautiful face only appeared when she saw the little boy in the cave. Young master, it's time to drink your medicine. Her voice was very gentle, and her beautiful eyes were fixed on the little boy, as if he was the only thing in her eyes. Put it down. Bai Su sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His jade-like face was filled with solemnity. After a long time, he finally opened his eyes and sighed. I wonder how long it will take for my body to return to its original state. Young master, Jinyu gently pursed her red lips. This subordinate has something to report. The Ghost Emperor. He destroyed the Bai family. Oh? Bai Su raised her eyebrows without batting an eyelid. So be it. After all, the members of the Bai clan are merely my puppets. If I did not need to use the Bai clan to gradually recover my strength, I would not have stayed in the Bai clan for so many years. But, young master, Jinyu, how many years have you been with me? Bai Su raised his head slightly and his demonic eyes fell upon the woman's beautiful face. For so many years, you have followed me everywhere. It must have been hard on you. Jinyu's heart suddenly moved and a crimson blush flashed across her beautiful face. Young master, ever since you saved me and brought me back to the Bai clan, my life has belonged to you. I can do anything for you. Chapter 672. For him, she would not regret it even if she was consigned to eternal damnation. However, 20 years ago, when Bai Su had picked her up, this man had looked like this. 20 years later, he was still the same. It was as if the passage of time did not leave any trace on his body. He was a legend who would never grow old, unless, when he was seriously injured, he would turn into a little boy. At other times, he would always look like he was in his 20s. He had never changed. Jinyu, you don't have to call me young master anymore. From now on, the Bai family will no longer exist. Bai Su curled the corners of his lips and said. Jinyu joined her fists. Yes, my lord. Jinyu, in a few days, we will leave this place and head for the continent of no return. The continent of no return was the other end of the forest of no return. It was also the place where Yun Zhao's mother was. The reason why it was called the continent of no return was because it was the same as the forest of no return. No one who had been there had returned. No matter where my lord is going, I will follow my lord for the rest of my life. Jin Yu raised her head and looked straight at Bai Su. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Her life was given by his lord. Even if he wanted to take it back one day, she would not regret it. On this continent, my strength recovers too slowly. Only when I go there will I have the ability to fight against the Ghost Emperor. Bai Su narrowed his eyes slightly, and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. What's more, I heard that the Ghost Emperor's mother is also there. Jin Yu asked in surprise. The Ghost Emperor's mother? That's right. Bai Su's finger gently tapped on the stone table in front of him, and he smiled coldly. Although I've left that place for a long time, I can still get all the information about that place. When the time comes, we can make a fuss in front of the Ghost Emperor's family. What does young master want this subordinate to do? Jin Yu frowned slightly and asked. It's very simple. The Ghost Emperor's mother has adopted a daughter. At that time, find a chance to get close to that woman and spread the good things about the Ghost Emperor in front of her. It's best if she falls in love with the Ghost Emperor. In this way, I will have the chance to separate the Ghost Emperor and Yun Luofeng. Looking at the little boy's gloomy expression, Jin Yu's heart surged with jealousy. But in the end, she suppressed all the bitterness in her heart. Yes, master. Since she was willing to do anything for his lord, that included helping him pursue other women. Even if the woman his lord loved was in danger, his lord wanted her to resist the danger for that woman. She would not hesitate to save her. Jin Yu. The little boy stood up and looked up at Jin Yu, who was higher than her. His slender fingers gently lifted her chin and moved close to her ear. He said in a very ambiguous tone, "When I'm done, I will never treat you badly." Jin Yu's heart beat instantly, so fast that she felt that her heart was about to leave her chest. She bit her lips tightly and stared at Bai Su with deep emotions in her beautiful eyes. My lord, as long as I can be by your side, I'm already satisfied. I have no other requests. All right. Bai Su let go of Jin Yu and smiled evilly. Now, pack up. We'll set off immediately before the Ghost Emperor finds us. After speaking, he flung his sleeves and quickly walked out of the cave. Jin Yu looked at Bai Su's disappearing figure obsessively, and her beautiful eyes were filled with deep admiration. Even though his lord has become like this, he's still so handsome. In this life, being able to accompany his lord is already a blessing that I've cultivated for several lifetimes. So, I dare not hope for anything else. Chapter 673. Yun Luofeng did not know anything about the situation in the cave. After settling the matter with the Doctors' Association, she followed Yun Qingya back to the general's mansion. The old man did not expect Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao to return at the same time. Even Yun Qingya had rushed back at this moment. He was so excited that tears streamed down his face. He pulled Yun Xiao and Yun Qingya to drink. This was a rare indulgence for them. Yun Luofeng did not stop them. Instead, he asked Qing Yin to bring them some sobering soup so that they wouldn't get drunk. After doing all this, she returned to her room to rest. It was only when night fell that the cold figure walked into the room under the moonlight. The moment the man appeared, Yun Luofeng had already woken up from her sleep. However, she still closed her eyes and did not move at all. For a long time, she could not feel the man's movements. She could only feel that this man was quietly standing at the head of her bed. His breathing was very light, as if he was afraid that he would disturb her. Feng'er, the man's voice was low and hoarse, but it carried a solemn vow. In this life, I will protect you by your side. I will never let anyone hurt you. Yun Luofeng's brows were slightly moved. At this moment, a gentle kiss landed on her eyelashes, filled with endless love. The man's kiss did not have the slightest hint of alcohol. Instead, it was filled with a fragrance that was exceptionally comfortable. Suddenly, the young girl who was lying on the bed opened her eyes. Her dark eyes were filled with smiles as she said, Yun Xiao, didn't you accompany Master Dongfang for a drink? Why did you come back so quickly? The old man had no other hobbies in his life. The only things he loved were wine and tea. If someone accompanied him to drink, he would not return for the entire night. Furthermore, in order to welcome second uncle, the old man had even called a group of scoundrels. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be able to return tonight. Because I beat up the princess of the royal family. Yun Zhao's expression was serious as she spoke as a matter of course. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose speechlessly. Did she provoke you? Yes. Yun Zhao's hoarse voice was magnetic. Her gaze kept drifting over to me. And then, I threw her out. Yun Xiao stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng. Only you can see me. In this world, only Yun Luofeng could look at him more than once. Even if other women only glanced at him, he would involuntarily feel a wave of disgust. Yun Luofeng raised his hand and patted Yun Zhao's face. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile. In the future, when the old man asks you to accompany him to drink, just ignore him. Let him cry and then hang himself. All right. Yun Zhao's voice became more and more hoarse, but it was so pleasant to the ears that it made people unable to extricate themselves. I'll listen to you. He had always listened to Yun Luofeng and would never reject any of her suggestions. Also, in the future, no matter if you're the Ghost Emperor or Yun Xiao, you'll have to wear a mask to prevent others from having improper thoughts about you. Yun Luofeng curled his lips and said flatteringly. Yun Xiao nodded slightly. I also have this thought. Looking at Yun Zhao's serious expression, the corners of Yun Luofeng's lips twitched. I was just joking. If you were to wear a mask, how would I be able to see your face at all times? Furthermore, you won't feel comfortable wearing a mask. She had indeed been joking. Who knew that Yun Xiao would suddenly become so serious? Chapter 674. Yun Zhao's gaze was fixed on Yun Luofeng. His tone was firm and unquestionable. I'll take anything you say seriously. He would never think that she was joking, because he would act on every word she said. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and slowly climbed up from the bed. She raised her head and gently hooked the man's chin with her fingers. Actually, your serious expression is very moving. She loved Yun Xiao because of his sincerity and seriousness. How could she not be moved by a man like this? Yun Zhao's eyes never blinked as he stared at the young girl in front of him. I think that your expression is very moving all the time. A dangerous light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes when he heard this. He asked with a half-smile, Where did you learn this from? Yun Xiao answered honestly, From a book. What book? Qin Yuan wrote it. How to Win a Woman's Favor. That book was indeed written by Qin Yuan for him. The contents were all about how to win a woman's favor. Oh? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Then how do you think I should win my favor? You should be able to work in the kitchen, enter the hall, get rid of your rival in love, and keep your chastity. The corners of Yun Zhao's lips curled up slightly. If you ask me to go east, I can't go west. If you ask me to chase after a dog, I can't chase after a cat. Also, you have to say sweet nothings. Yun Xiao paused and continued, I can do all these. But he could only do it for her alone. Yun Luofeng nodded in satisfaction. This Qin Yuan is better than what Lin Xiong taught you. At least he didn't give you any erotic pictures to study with me, and he didn't ask you to offer your body. If Qin Yuan heard Yun Luofeng's words, he would definitely be so moved that tears streamed down his cheeks. His efforts over the past few days had finally paid off. Just based on what Mistress had said, Master would not scare him so often in the future. In the eyes of Yun Zhao's subordinates, their master was a very frightening existence, especially the cold aura that he emitted at any time. It scared them to the point that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was only in front of the mistress that the master would restrain all his hostility and become unprecedentedly obedient. That's right. Qin Yuan used the words obedient and obedient to describe Yun Xiao. It was precisely because he was well aware of Yun Luofeng's position in Yun Zhao's heart that he would tell him how to curry favor with the mistress. Even if he didn't say it, his master would do it himself. Yun Xiao, Yun Luofeng smiled faintly. I have one more thing to ask you. When you went drinking with the old man and the others, why was the imperial princess there? Yun Xiao looked at Yun Luofeng. That woman is the Grand Tutor's disciple. Grand Tutor was invited to drink this time, so she followed him. Moreover, Grand Tutor wants her to marry Yun Qingya. The man's words were already very obvious. The Grand Tutor had his eyes on Yun Qingya. He originally wanted the princess to come and matchmake Yun Qingya, but who knew that the princess did not take a fancy to second uncle. Instead, she took a fancy to Yun Xiao. Thus, she angered Yun Xiao and was thrown out by Yun Xiao. What did the old man say? Yun Luofeng's voice deepened. Yun Luofeng didn't know if it was an illusion, but after she finished speaking, a hint of a smile seemed to flash across Yun Zhao's face. The old man said that he wants to sever all ties with the Grand Tutor and tell the master and disciple to scram as far away as possible. Chapter 675. Yun Luofeng was speechless. This had always been the old man's style, arrogant and domineering. Yet, it made one feel helpless. I'm sleepy. Yun Luofeng stretched lazily. The old man will handle this matter. We don't have to worry about it. Even if the person that the imperial princess likes is not you but second uncle, I still won't agree. After all, my second aunt has already been set to be Ning Xian. Knowing second uncle's personality, he would never like a spoiled and willful imperial princess. After she had spoken, Yun Luofeng did not pursue the matter any further. She gently narrowed her eyes as she looked at Yun Xiao with a smile on her lips. Do you plan to sleep with me or go out? I'll follow you. The man did not say it clearly, but the meaning behind his words was clear. He wanted to share a bed with Yun Luofeng. Even if they could not do anything now, he would be satisfied as long as he could hug her to sleep. Aren't you afraid that you can't hold it in? Yun Luofeng looked at Yun Xiao with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Yun Xiao was silent for a moment before she replied, I can hold it in? All right, then you can go to bed. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes and the smile on her face grew wider. The next day, the sky had just brightened when the old man's angry roar sounded from the great hall. What are you doing here? Yun Luofeng had just stepped out of the great hall when she heard the old man's angry voice. She gently raised her brows and walked in. Grandfather, why are you so angry so early in the morning? The young girl's voice slowly drifted into the hall, causing the old man's brows to gradually calm down. Feng why are you here? The old man smiled as he watched the young girl walk into the great hall. His face carried an affectionate smile. Yun Luofeng did not seem to see the old man and the young girl in the great hall as she slowly walked towards the old man. Your voice was so loud. I'm afraid that everyone in the general's residence could hear you. How could I not come? Sigh. The old man sighed. It's actually nothing big. I didn't think that I would disturb you. Grandfather. Yun Luofeng smiled wickedly. Even if you didn't disturb me, I still wanted to see who dared to have designs on my man. As she spoke, she looked at the old man and the young man in the hall. The old man's beard was white, and his wrinkled face was filled with helplessness. His back was bent, and his aged figure looked extremely pitiful as he stood in the breeze. Kneeling beside him was a young girl dressed in luxurious clothes. Her face was slightly pale, and her eyes were filled with tears of grievance. She bit her lips and did not make a sound. Needless to say, this young lady was the younger sister of the current emperor, the sixth princess of Long Yuan country. Her expression was one of grievance and humiliation. It was as if for her, having a princess like her kneel to a general was something shameful. However, it wasn't only the Grand Tutor's idea to come and apologize. Even her imperial brother had forced her to come. She had no choice but to come and beg for forgiveness. Lady Yun, this matter is indeed the sixth princess's fault. She did not intentionally glance at your guard. Because of this, I have specially brought her here to apologize. As he spoke, the Grand Tutor deliberately emphasized the words guard. However, he did not notice that after these words were spoken, Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened slightly. The Grand Tutor hurriedly pushed the sixth princess and shouted sternly, "What are you waiting for? Quickly apologize to Lady Yun." Chapter 676. The sixth princess bit her lip as tears of grievance flowed from her eyes. She said timidly, I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Please forgive me." The Yun family was too powerful, so powerful that even her royal brother feared them. This was also the reason why her royal brother wanted her to apologize. But her heart skipped a beat when she thought of the first time she saw Yun Xiao. At that time, Yun Luofeng had been summoned to the palace by Gao Tuesday. She had heard about this and sneaked out to peek. In the end, she saw the cold man standing next to Yun Luofeng. From then on, she had fallen deeply into it and was unable to extricate herself. She thought that she would never have the chance to see him again in this lifetime. Who knew that she would see him again yesterday? Because of this, she couldn't help but peek at him and couldn't suppress the adoration in her heart. But she never thought that her peeping would anger this man so much that he would throw her out of the room on the second floor and onto the street. No one knew that at that moment, she even had the urge to die. What caused her to act so impulsively was not because she had lost face in front of everyone, but because when the man threw her, he had actually snatched a person's clothes, wrapped his hand in the clothes, and thrown her out. That action made it seem as if there was some bacteria on her body that would contaminate him. Being treated like this by the man she loved, how could she not feel despair? General Yun, Miss Yun, the sixth princess has apologized and received her punishment. Can you forgive her? The Grand Tutor looked at Master Yun carefully and asked. Master Yun scoffed, I didn't plan to do anything to you. Why are you bothering me at a time like this? Don't you know that I feel disgusted when I see you? I didn't want to do anything to you at first, but now that I see you, my hands can't help but itch and I want to do something. The sixth princess raised her eyes in fear and hurriedly turned to the Grand Tutor, her eyes pleading for help. The Grand Tutor sighed heavily. Old General, we have been friends for many years. Friends? I wouldn't dare to accept such an honor. I've only invited you for a drink or two because you didn't kick the Yun family when they were down. How could there be any friendship between us? At most, we are drinking buddies. The old man paused and said mockingly, What's more, even if you didn't hit me when I was down, why should I make my granddaughter and grandson-in-law unhappy? When it came to such matters, the old master was still able to distinguish between them. Seeing that the sixth princess did not go overboard, he would not do anything harsh to these people. Similarly, he would not associate with them anymore. Now, he could be considered to have come to terms with it. None of the people from the royal family were good people. The Grand Tutor laughed bitterly. Old General, are you really not going to forgive me? Originally, he had brought the sixth princess here to build a good relationship with the Yun family. Now, even the imperial family had to be courteous to the general's mansion. If they were to form a marriage alliance with the general's mansion, there would definitely be countless benefits. Thus, he had brought his own disciple over. In his opinion, his disciple was well-educated, gentle, and virtuous. There was no way the Yun family wouldn't like her. However, who would have thought that his disciple, who had always made him proud, did not take a fancy to Yun Qingya. Instead, he fell in love with the Yun family's guard and even angered the old man. Chapter 677. Grandfather. Seeing that Master Yun was about to continue speaking, Yun Luofeng swept a glance at him and stopped him from speaking. Then, he shot a cold glance at the sixth princess. Let me ask you this. If the Yun family was just a general's household without any power and needed to rely on the royal family, what would you do after you've taken a liking to Yun Xiao? You would ask the emperor to order me to give Yun Xiao to you. Yun Luofeng's eyes lit up, as if he could see through everything. The sixth princess's face paled. Her eyes filled with panic as if she had been seen through. What she said was the truth. If the Yun family was not so powerful, perhaps she would have asked her royal brother to order Yun Xiao to marry her. As for Yun Luofeng, she would make another order to choose a good husband for her. So, why do you think the Yun family should forgive you? Yun Luofeng raised his brows slightly. I'll give you a chance. Leave the Yun family immediately after I count 3. Otherwise, I won't let you step out of this door. She had long known that based on Yun Zhao's excellence, he would attract countless peach blossoms. So, she had to be prepared to break these peach blossoms one by one. Since Yun Xiao was the man she had taken a liking to, he could only have her as his woman in this lifetime. The sixth princess gritted her teeth fiercely. I'm willing to be his concubine. Do you know, ever since I saw him domineeringly snatch away Imperial concubine Mu's seat for you in the Imperial Palace, I've been fascinated by his temperament. I've never wanted to hurt you. I just want to be by his side. I have no other wish. In the end, the sixth princess still said this. After saying this, her body softened and she sat paralyzed on the ground, staring pleadingly at Yun Luofeng. Don't worry, I'll definitely get along well with you. I'm confident. Slap. The Grand Tutor was stunned by the sixth princess's words at first. After a long while, he finally reacted and slapped her across the face, saying angrily, Sixth princess, do you know what you've just said? He's only a guard, and you want to be a guard's concubine? The sixth princess shook her head. He's not a guard. He's such a powerful and domineering man. He's definitely not a guard. Besides, even if he's a guard, I still want to follow him. Grand Tutor was so angry that he raised his hand again, but his slap didn't land. Sixth princess, have you forgotten what your brother told you before you came? You are really stubborn. The sixth princess did not look at the Grand Tutor. Her gaze was always on Yun Luofeng. Sister Yun, I know he's not your guard. He definitely has another identity. Although I don't know why he has to stay by your side as a guard, I do know that a man has to take a concubine. You don't want him to take a concubine who is always against you and is very worrisome. Her eyes were still sincere, and there was no longer that aggrieved look in her eyes. I swear, if I become his concubine, I will definitely listen to you and respect you in all aspects. I will even join forces with you to deal with the concubines he takes in the future. I only hope that Big Sister Yun can accept me, even if it's just me serving you. Heh! Suddenly, Yun Luofeng chuckled. His chuckle was so cold that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 678. Since you wish to become his concubine, you can go and look for him. The young girl caught a glimpse of the man who had just entered the great hall. The corners of her lips curled into an angle and her eyes held a faint smile. The sixth princess did not seem to notice the man behind her. She gritted her teeth and said, I don't know how I've offended this man to the point that he would humiliate me in front of so many people. Lady Yun, as his legal wife, you have the right to take a concubine on his behalf. That's why I have the audacity to ask you to fulfill my request. As soon as the sixth princess said this, she suddenly felt a chill coming from behind her, causing her internal organs to tremble uncontrollably. Is that so? Yun Luofeng slowly approached the sixth princess. Then why do you think I would willingly hand my man over to someone else? The sixth princess suppressed the fear in her heart and continued to speak. Lady Yun, he will have to take a concubine sooner or later. Do you want him to find someone who is not compatible with you? Since that's the case, why don't I let you have less to worry about? Boom. Suddenly, the chill from behind her grew even stronger. It was as if an invisible fist had landed on the sixth princess's back. Instantly, her body was flung out of the way and she spat out a mouthful of blood. When the sixth princess landed on the ground, the Grand Tutor felt the pressure on his body disappear, and he could finally catch his breath. However, when he saw the man's grim features, fear rose in his heart and his elderly body trembled. From the moment Yun Xiao had stepped into the great hall, he had noticed his presence. Just as he was about to warn the sixth princess, his body suddenly became immobilized and he could not even make a sound. This feeling was as if an invisible hand was strangling him fiercely. You. The sixth princess raised her pale face and stared in shock at the black-robed man who was as grim as an eagle. A sense of fear slowly appeared in her eyes. Yun Zhao's cold gaze was fixed upon the sixth princess. Even when the man had thrown her out of the window in the restaurant last night, he had never looked at her. But now, the man's eyes were on her. Logically speaking, the sixth princess should have been very excited, but now, she could not bring herself to smile at all. The man's gaze was very cold and cruel. It was as if she was just an ant in his eyes, the kind that could be squashed to death at any time. Remember. Yun Luofeng sneered at the sixth princess. No one else is allowed to touch my man. If anyone dares to target him, I'll make sure they won't be able to return. The sixth princess opened her mouth wide in panic. She had not expected Yun Luofeng to say such a thing. She hurriedly looked at the cold-faced man, but saw that he had no reaction to her words, as if he was silently approving of all her actions. At this moment, the sixth princess could not tell what she was feeling. Jealousy? Or envy? She only knew that in this lifetime, she would never be able to accompany this man. If she couldn't accompany him, then what was the point of living? Sixth princess, what are you doing? The Grand Tutor's eyes reddened when he saw the sixth princess drawing her sword. He was so anxious that he wanted to rush over and snatch the sword from her hand. Before he could reach the sixth princess, he saw Yun Xiao raise her hand and send the Grand Tutor flying with one slap. With a bang, his body rolled out of the hall. Chapter 679. A man's cold and hoarse voice rang in her ear. If she wants to die, let her die. Other than Yun Luofeng, there was no other woman in this world who could make her feel pity. The sixth princess's fingers trembled and the hand on her neck trembled slightly. Even though she had wanted to die, she could not bring herself to do it. However, he had never imagined that this man would be so cold and callous. It made one's heart turn cold. Hee. The sixth princess laughed. Her smile was incomparably desolate. Ever since I first saw you, my heart has fallen on you. I've never asked for anything else but to be by your side, whether as a concubine or a servant. Why am I willing to give up my dignity in exchange for your heartlessness? Yun Xiao looked at the sixth princess expressionlessly. Suicide? Or should I do it? The sixth princess's heart suddenly trembled. She did not hold on tightly to the sword in her hand, causing it to slip from her palm. Her slightly raised eyes were filled with pain. How have I offended you? Yun Xiao was not a talkative person, but he felt that the other party had not suffered enough of a blow. He suddenly said, Your wishful thinking has offended me. There was no other reason, but because of her wishful thinking, she had offended him. The sixth princess lowered her eyes and silently picked up the long sword on the ground. She smiled miserably and said, I understand. I won't stay here and be an eyesore to you. If you want me to die, I can grant your wish. From the beginning, Yun Luofeng had his fists folded and watched everything coldly from the sidelines. Love could easily make a person lose their rationality. After all, she could not stay in the Yun family for the rest of her life. In order to prevent her family from being hurt, she must nip all dangers in the bud. She must not let them have any chance to sprout. The sixth princess slowly placed the sword on her neck again. Her sorrowful eyes stared at Yun Xiao, and there was a tinge of unwillingness in her eyes. She was hoping that this man would have some pity in his heart and stop her from committing suicide. However, he did not. Yun Xiao only looked at her coldly, his face expressionless. Mother. Suddenly, a soft voice rang out from outside the hall. After hearing this voice, everyone instantly turned their heads to look at it. It was a little boy who was dressed in a snow-white robe and looked like he was carved from jade. This little boy's eyes were exceptionally bright, and his cute little face had a brilliant smile. He was so innocent and pure that it made people very fond of him. Little Imo? Yun Luofeng was startled. This morning, little Imo left the divine grimoire space, saying that he had something to do. But now, he had appeared here. Mother, father, I'm back. Little Mo's smile was exceptionally bright. A dark light flashed across his eyes when he saw the sixth princess. He didn't know if it was intentional, but he deliberately stood far away from Yun Luofeng and exposed himself in front of the sixth princess. Yun Zhao's body froze as he stared at the little fellow who had called him daddy. How could he not remember having a child with Fenger? Little Imo, where did you go just now? Yun Luofeng frowned and was about to walk towards little Imo. However, at this moment, a light breeze flashed by and appeared in front of little Imo in no time. The sixth princess's expression was no longer as pitiful as before. She placed the sword on little Mo's neck and looked coldly at the people in the hall. Chapter 680. Sixth Princess. Seeing the sixth princess' actions, the Grand Tutor turned pale with fright and hurriedly shouted, "Let go of the Yun family's young master. Don't drag the entire royal family down with you if you want to die. I'm going to die sooner or later anyway. Why don't you let me fulfill my long-cherished wish before I die?" The sixth princess' gaze gradually turned towards Yun Xiao and softened. "I want to spend one night with you. As long as you let me spend one night with you, I'll let your son go." At this moment, the sixth princess' gaze was fixed on Yun Xiao, and she did not notice the evil smile on Xiao Mo's face. "You're courting death." Master Yun slammed the table and stood up. The veins on his forehead bulged as he roared, "If you dare touch a single hair on my precious great-grandson, I'll make sure you die without a burial." Heh! The sixth princess laughed mockingly. "I've already said that I'm going to die sooner or later. I might as well enjoy myself before I die. General Yun, I think it's worth it to use your son-in-law's body in exchange for your grandson's life. Besides, I only want to use him for one night. It's not like I'm taking him for myself." Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened. "I'm afraid you won't be able to use him." Yun Luofeng, I know that you're very possessive. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said those words earlier. I've already shown you mercy. At least I didn't force you to witness me making love with him." The sixth princess curled the corners of her lips and said coldly, "Don't blame me. Blame your son for rushing out at this time. If you don't want your son's life, I can satisfy you." Master Yun trembled in anger. "Yun Xiao won't give it to you. Don't even think about taking my great-grandson's life." This time, he was completely enraged. His aura exploded uncontrollably and destroyed the entire hall in an instant. "Yun Xiao, you don't have to do anything." Yun Luofeng glanced at the man next to him and said softly, "If Xiaomo wants to play, let him play." The sixth princess was only thinking about Yun Xiao and had forgotten to suppress him. Whether it was her or Yun Xiao, they could immobilize the sixth princess just by releasing their aura, much less harm Xiaomo. But Yun Luofeng did not do so. From the moment little Imo appeared, she knew that he wanted to punish the sixth princess in his own way. Little Imo had been bored in the divine grimoire for so many years, so she was willing to indulge his greed. "Yun Luofeng, at a time like this, you still want to frighten us?" The sixth princess sneered. "I've already knelt down and begged you. In the end, you still treat me so cruelly. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. I must have him tonight. As for you, you must watch me make love to him in bed. This is my punishment for you." The Grand Tutor was so frightened that he almost fainted. He did not know how the sixth princess could be so bold as to say such things in front of Yun Luofeng, the god of plague. He didn't know that no matter how gentle a woman was, once she met the person she liked, she would become extremely crazy. Just as the Grand Tutor was about to shout again, a soft voice suddenly rang out, echoing in the breeze for a long time. "Auntie, how are you going to kill me?" Little Mo's voice was very calm, so calm that it was unusual. Of course I'm going to cut off your neck and kick it like a ball. Of course, if your mother agrees. The sixth princess smiled icily and turned around. Suddenly, the words that she was about to say were stuck in her throat. She widened her eyes in horror and looked as if she had seen something terrifying. Chapter 681. Auntie, you said to cut off my head. Is that it? In the great hall, the little boy plucked his head off and held it in his hands. His face still carried an innocent smile, but it now looked incomparably sinister. Ah! A shrill scream rang through the entire Yun family home. Auntie, didn't you say that you wanted to cut my neck? I've even saved you some time. How are you going to thank me? Xiaomo smiled as he watched the sixth princess retreat. He took a few steps forward and handed his head over to the sixth princess. I'll let you kick it like a ball. His face was right in front of the sixth princess's, his bright eyes filled with a chilling smile. Don't come any closer. Clang. The sixth princess's sword fell to the ground. Her legs trembled and her pale face was filled with fear. A strong smell of urine wafted through the air. You were the one who wanted to kick my head like a ball. I pitied you for being so poor that you couldn't even afford to buy a game of football. That's why I plucked my head off for you. Why didn't you accept my kindness? As soon as Xiaomo finished speaking, the sixth princess's eyes rolled back and she fainted. How boring! Xiaomo curled his lips and put his head back on his neck. She fainted from just a scare. Mother, how are you going to deal with her now? Xiaomo turned to look at Yun Luofeng and suddenly realized that the furious old man had been completely scared out of his wits. His eyes were staring blankly at him. Feeling a little apologetic, he called out, "Great-grandfather." Thump. It would have been better if Xiaomo had not called out. Now that he had called out, the old man's eyes also rolled back and he fainted from fright. Anyone who saw a living person plucking their head off and still able to speak would have fainted, except for Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao, because these two were so mentally strong that they could not be considered human. Grandfather. Yun Luofeng's expression changed slightly. She hurriedly stepped forward and pinched the old man's philtrum tightly. At the same time, a wave of spiritual energy flowed from her fingertips into the old man's philtrum. The old man slowly woke up. Feng, was I dreaming just now? I dreamt that little Imo cut off his own head? Yun Luofeng looked at the well-behaved little Imo and sighed helplessly. Grandfather, I want to be honest with you about something. What? The old man asked in a daze. Xiaomo saw someone from the Bai clan asking for my hand in marriage. In order to prevent other men from having any ideas about me, he pretended to be my son. Yun Luofeng pulled little Imo over from the side and continued, Don't be fooled by his 6 years of age. In fact, he's older than all of us combined. The old man scratched his head like a monk and asked in confusion, Fenger, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. What did he mean by little Imo was older than all of them combined? This little fellow was clearly only 5 or 6 years old. He's not human. The 4 words revealed little Mo's identity. Grandfather, all these years, I've been hiding it from you. Yun Luofeng raised his eyes and stared deeply at the old man. Everyone says that I had concealed my strength in the past, which was why I was able to explode with such great power in the end. Actually, I was indeed a complete and utter good-for-nothing in the past. There was nothing to hide. Chapter 682. The old man's jaw dropped in shock as he stared at Yun Luofeng in astonishment. You mean to say that in these 2 years, you went from a good-for-nothing to a celestial spirit cultivator? To go from a good-for-nothing to a celestial spirit cultivator in 2 years, how abnormal was that? That's right. Yun Luofeng nodded lightly. All of this happened because I met Xiaomo. He's lived for a long time and knows how to help me get rid of my good-for-nothing constitution. Yun Luofeng was telling the truth. If Xiaomo had not given her the prescription, she would not have been able to get rid of her good-for-nothing title. But at the same time, There were many things that she had not told the old man. For example, transmigration, or the medicine field. The old man's jaw dropped. He had many questions to ask Yun Luofeng, but in the end, he did not ask a single word. No matter what, she was still his granddaughter. That alone was enough. Feng I'll only say one thing. The old man crawled up from the ground and said stubbornly, I don't care if Xiaomo is your biological son or how long he has lived. He is my great-grandson. The old man really liked Xiaomo from the bottom of his heart. Even if he was not Yun Luofeng's child, he would still treat him as his great-grandson. That's up to you. Yun Luofeng shrugged and turned to look at Xiaomo. You don't have to call me mother anymore. Also, you're not allowed to scare the old man. Xiaomo stuck out his tongue and said with a smile, Master, I forgot that great-grandfather was here and accidentally scared him. In the future, wherever great-grandfather is, I won't do such a thing. The old man was very happy to hear the little fellow call him great-grandfather, but he could not help but look at Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao with a sad gaze. When can the two of you let me hold the baby? This. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose. We'll have to wait. Wait for how long? The old man's eyes widened as he asked. Probably. When I break through to the venerable realm. What? The old man jumped in anger. When you break through to the venerable realm? Then how long do I have to wait? I don't care. I just want to hold the baby. The two of you hurry up and get married. Wasn't there a term for old children? Once the old man became willful, no one could stop him. Don't worry. Yun Xiao raised her hand and pulled Yun Luofeng into her embrace. She lowered her gaze to stare at the young girl's peerlessly beautiful features. We will complete the task you've given us as soon as possible. Why are you calling me elder? You should call me grandpa. When the old man, who had been glaring at Yun Luofeng, looked at Yun Xiao again, that chrysanthemum-like face blossomed into a resplendent smile. This made Yun Luofeng wonder if Yun Xiao was this old man's biological grandson and he had adopted him. Otherwise, the difference between their attitudes would be like heaven and earth. However, Yun Xiao's expression stiffened when she heard old Master Shang's words. All these years, he had never had any relatives, especially his grandfather. Thus, these two words were extremely difficult for him to say. Yun Luofeng glanced at Yun Xiao, then turned towards the old man. She was just about to say a few words on Yun Xiao's behalf, but in that instant, the man's cold and hoarse voice rang out beside her ear. Grandpa, there was a hint of awkwardness in his voice. It was obvious that he was not used to this form of address. Ha ha, the old man laughed heartily. Hearing the word grandpa makes me so happy. Chapter 683. Yun Luofeng felt wronged. I've been calling you grandfather all these years and I've never seen you so happy. How can granddaughter be called the same as grandson-in-law? Master Yun glared at Yun Luofeng and said irritably, Grandfather, am I your biological granddaughter? If you don't make me angry all day, I'll admit that you're my biological granddaughter. Master Yun scoffed and continued, You two handle the rest. I'm going out for some tea. Then, he turned and walked out of the hall. In reality, Master Yun was a very protective person. If Yun Luofeng was bullied, he would be the first to stand up for her. Wasn't there a saying that went, Love me, love my dog? Because Yun Xiao had given her heart and soul to Yun Luofeng, he had accepted Yun Xiao. If it had been someone like Gao Ling, even if Yun Luofeng liked her, he wouldn't have cared. Little Amo, wake her up. Yun Luofeng's gaze gradually turned towards the unconscious sixth princess. His eyes darkened as he ordered coldly, Master, I'm the best at waking people up. Little Mo's face lit up with an evil smile as he slowly walked towards the sixth princess. It was unknown when a dagger had appeared in his hand. Under the morning light, the dagger emitted an intense, bone-piercing cold light. When the dagger cut off the sixth princess's finger, she woke up. She saw the eerie smile on Little Mo's face, and her body trembled uncontrollably. You, don't come over. Help, Master. Save me. Unfortunately, the Grand Tutor had already fainted from Little Mo's earlier actions and could not respond to the sixth princess's call for help. Do you still want to kick my head? Little Mo smiled evilly. If you want, I don't mind taking it off again. No, I don't want it anymore. I'm begging you. Please let me go. I won't have any more wishful thinking. The sixth princess hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. She didn't even feel her scalp breaking. Don't be fooled by her repeated attempts at suicide. In reality, she was used to living a pampered life and feared death the most. Do you still want to steal my mother's man? No, I don't want to think about it anymore. The sixth princess bit her pale lips tightly. Her heart was filled with unprecedented panic. She never thought that Yun Luofeng's son would be so abnormal. A living person was actually able to cut off his head. If that wasn't abnormal, then what was? What the sixth princess did not know was that Xiao Mo was not a human. He was merely a spiritual being born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. His body was forged with spiritual power. Unless the opponent was too strong and could make his spiritual power go berserk in an instant, he would not die. Don't want to? Unfortunately, it's too late. Little Mo sneered. He turned to look at Yun Xiao and his lips curled into a smile. Yun Xiao's father. How should I deal with her? Even though Yun Luofeng had told him not to call them father and mother, he still used this form of address in front of a delusional woman like the sixth princess. A life worse than death. The man's voice was as cold as ever, but it made the sixth princess's heart turn cold. A life worse than death? This man actually wanted her to live a life worse than death? That was even more painful than death. No. The sixth princess screamed in panic. You can't do this. That's too cruel. I don't want to live a life worse than death. Chapter 684. Shut up. Xiao Mo's little face sank. He then stomped fiercely on the sixth princess's chest and sneered. Who gave you permission to make such a ruckus in the Yun family home? My father wants you to suffer a fate worse than death, so you must suffer a fate worse than death. Besides, my parents don't need to do anything about this. It would only dirty their hands. The sixth princess spat out a mouthful of blood after being stomped on by Xiao Mo. Her pale features were filled with shock. She did not know where this little fellow had gotten such great power from to render her completely defenseless. Milk tea. Xiao Mo raised his chin. Tear this woman to pieces. Oh, that's right. My father wants her to suffer a fate worse than death, so let her live for a few more days. Don't toy with her to death in one day. Squeak, squeak. Milk tea squeaked and crawled out from Yun Luofeng's sleeve. He placed his little paws on his waist and puffed out his chest as he walked towards the sixth princess. You threatened my master, and now you're getting your just desserts, aren't you? Milk tea stared at the sixth princess with disdain. She did not hide her powers and spoke in the human language. After Xiao Mo's act of cutting off her head, the sixth princess was once again shocked. She widened her eyes as she stared fixedly at the gold-seeking mouse in front of her. A chill crept into her heart. It was only at this moment that she realized that she had underestimated the Yun family. This spiritual beast that could speak in the human language was not an existence that the imperial family could resist. The sixth princess gently closed her eyes at the thought of this. Her heart was overflowing with regret and nearly swallowed her whole. Xiao Mo, don't let her blood stain the Yun family home. Clean it up after this. Yun Luofeng then turned around and walked out of the great hall. Was she ruthless? On this mainland where the strong were revered, if one did not use cruel methods, one would be at the mercy of others. Kindness would not be able to survive in this place. If the sixth princess had spied on Yun Xiao, perhaps she would not have allowed her to die so painfully. However, she had used Xiao Mo as a threat. Even though Xiao Mo was not afraid of the sixth princess based on her level of power, she could not tolerate anyone threatening her family. That's right. In Yun Luofeng's heart, Xiao Mo was no different from family. If it weren't for her, he might have died in the explosion of the experiment, and he wouldn't have the status he had today. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng paused in his steps and turned to look at the man next to him. If anyone threatens you and the lives of my loved ones, I will send them to hell even if I have to overturn the entire world. Yun Xiao gripped the young girl's hand tightly, her expression determined. No matter what you want to do, I will accompany you, even if he had to accompany her to overthrow the world. Yun Luofeng smiled. Her smile was poignant and beautiful. She no longer had the arrogance and dominance that she displayed in front of others. Yun Xiao, do you believe in your past life? She slowly retracted her gaze, and without waiting for Yun Xiao to speak, she continued, in my past life, I had a blissful family. However, because of my father's wealth, it led to the destruction of the entire family. When I was young, my mother hid me and I managed to escape. However, I could only watch as my parents fell into a pool of blood. I was so scared that I didn't dare to speak. The murderer who killed my parents used the excuse of adopting me to forcibly seize my family's assets. However, after a few years, he sent me to an orphanage. Yun Luofeng's heart became even more determined as she thought of the events of her past life. Chapter 685. In my previous life, I wasn't on this mainland. There was no spiritual energy on that mainland, and no one cultivated there. Even so, it was still a world where the strong preyed on the weak. In that world, money was everything. During those years in the orphanage, I suffered the fickleness of human nature, and I also saw the supercilious looks of the world. I, who had always been kind, only understood after countless setbacks that kindness was of no use. Power was the most important thing. Yun Luofeng's gaze turned towards Yun Xiao once again. So, to be able to live again, I want power more than anyone else. And the reason why I want power, it's because I want to live. In her previous life, she had used up all her strength in order to live. If she hadn't met her master, perhaps she would have spent her entire life in darkness. Yun Xiao, do you believe what I've said? Yun Luofeng's black eyes flashed with a strange light as he stared unblinkingly at Yun Xiao. Yun Xiao silently embraced Yun Luofeng's body. At that moment, he clearly felt the coldness of the young girl's body, and his heart unconsciously ached. I'll believe anything you say. Yun Luofeng smiled. That's all in the past. Now, I have a brand new life. In that world, I no longer have any relatives. The only thing I can't let go of is my master. Furthermore, I passed away before I could avenge my parents. Even though she knew who had killed her parents, she didn't have any evidence. As a result, she couldn't avenge them even after so many years. Where is the place that you speak of? Is the murderer of your family still alive? Yun Xiao frowned slightly as he asked. The place that I lived in my previous life was called China. The murderer of my parents is still at large. Not being able to avenge them would perhaps become the thing that she hated the most in her life. Yun Xiao lowered her brows and silently made up her mind. Yun Xiao, it's grandfather's birthday soon. After the birthday, we'll immediately set off and head to the other end of the forest of no return. However, on the day of her grandfather's birthday, she would present him with a gift. As she watched Yun Luofeng's figure walk towards the backyard, Yun Xiao said grimly, Qin Yuan, go and check if there's a mainland named China. Yes, master. Behind the man, Yun Xiao cupped his fists respectfully, but a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. China? Why had he never heard of this place before? However, he didn't dare to ask this question. Since his master had asked him to look for it, he had to do his best to search for it. Also, Yun Xiao swept her cold gaze across the unconscious grand tutor and said in a cold voice, cripple his dantian and throw him out. If he dares to take another step into the Yun family, break his legs. Other than in front of Yun Luofeng, he was always cold and heartless to others. That was why he was known as the Ghost Emperor. Understood. Qin Yuan looked sympathetically at the grand tutor. This fellow could have taken in anyone as a disciple, But why did he have to take in someone as arrogant as the sixth princess? In that case, it was his own fault for being dragged down by her. Who asked these people to provoke his mistress yesterday and still dare to come knocking on his door today? The fact that Master didn't kill him was already an exceptional mercy. Qin Yuan, Yun Shao paused for a moment before he gave another order. Spread the news of what happened today in an exaggerated manner. As his voice fell, Yun Shao did not say anything else and his grim figure gradually disappeared under the morning light. Chapter 686. Qin Yuan's efficiency was high. Because the sixth princess's actions were already outrageous, Qin Yuan did not need to add fuel to the fire to shock the world. In less than a day, everyone in the imperial city knew what the sixth princess had done in the general's mansion. It was said that she fell in love with the Yun family's son-in-law at first sight and wanted to replace Yun Luofeng. Because Yun Luofeng rejected her, the sixth princess kidnapped Yun Luofeng's son to threaten him. And the content of her threat was for the Yun family's son-in-law to sleep with her for a night. She even shamelessly stuck to him. As for the matter of little Mo taking off her head, no one knew. The sixth princess had fallen into the Yun family's hands, and the Grand Tutor had gone crazy when he woke up. He could not remember what he did that day, but he kept screaming for the sixth princess to stop. It was precisely because of these words that the Yun family's announcement was further confirmed. The entire imperial city was in an uproar. Who was Yun Luofeng? That woman was a demon who killed without blinking an eye. The sixth princess dared to steal her man? Wasn't this the same as touching a tiger's butt? At this moment, in the imperial palace, a man dressed in dragon robes sat on the dragon throne. His face was pale as he looked at all the officials present. My dear officials, Lu has committed an unforgivable mistake by going to the Yun family. Do you have any way to redeem herself? A man dressed in court robes slowly walked out from the crowd of officials. He joined his fists respectfully and said, Your Imperial Majesty, the sixth princess has provoked the Yun family. If we want to protect ourselves, we have no choice but to abandon her. After all, the Yun family's eldest daughter is too domineering and cannot tolerate a single grain of sand in her eyes. If we do not give up on the sixth princess, we will definitely become enemies with the Yun family. The emperor sighed. That is all we can do. The sixth princess was his biological sister. Even so, he had no choice but to give her up. It was his sister's fault for being so audacious that she dared to offend someone from the Yun family. Everyone knew that in the entire Long Yuan country, even if someone offended the emperor, they could not offend the Yun family, even if it was just a servant. But she, on the other hand, snatched a man from Yun Luofeng. Reporting to your majesty. Another official stood out and said respectfully, General Yun's heart is no longer with the imperial family. Right now, he only had the title of a general. Therefore, I have a suggestion. If we were to form a marriage alliance with the Yun family, we might be able to mend the relationship between the two sides. Marriage? With whom? Yun Luofeng or Yun Qingya? The emperor frowned and asked. The minister smiled. The royal family no longer has any unmarried princes, so they can't marry Yun Luofeng. Thus, they can only choose Yun Qingya. I suggest that we use Princess Lingxin to marry Yun Qingya. The emperor's expression changed slightly. Princess Lingxin, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. Lingxin was different from the sixth princess. Even though the sixth princess was the emperor's biological sister and Princess Lingxin was his half-sister, he could not bear to marry Lingxin off. There was no other reason other than that Ling Xian's physique was a little different. He was an excellent cauldron. If he had intercourse with her, he would be able to increase his strength. Of course, he only found out about this recently. Otherwise, when Gao Tu was still in power, he would never have let go of such a perfect cauldron. He would have used her to obtain the greatest benefits for himself. If it wasn't for the coincidence, no one would have discovered this. Chapter 687. Your Majesty, if it was in the past, we could just use any princess to form a marriage alliance with the Yun family. But now, the Yun family is already very dissatisfied with the royal family. If we don't take out a better one, the Yun family might not accept it. The minister continued to persuade. When the other ministers heard this, they all stood up. Your Majesty, the Prime Minister is right. Please use Princess Lingxin's marriage alliance to eliminate the Yun family's dissatisfaction with the royal family. Your Majesty, please allow it. So what if we sacrifice Princess Lingxin for the royal family? The emperor sighed heavily. Even though he was a little reluctant, he could only agree to the minister's request for the sake of the entire royal family. This matter will be left to the Prime Minister. Dismissed. Farewell, Your Majesty. The ministers all knelt down and said respectfully. Under the respectful farewell of the ministers, the emperor flicked his sleeves and left without looking back. The day of the birthday, which everyone had been waiting for, finally came. On this day, the Yun family was extremely lively. The entrance was like a market, and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. However, no matter how noble one's status was, they had to dismount and walk 10 meters away from the Yun family. Even the members of the royal family had never broken this rule. From this, one could see the status of the Yun family in everyone's hearts. Old Master Yun sat in the hall with a smile. He did not go forward to welcome the guests, but no one dared to raise any objections. Who asked the Yun family to be so powerful? Who dared to ask him to welcome them? Therefore, the nobles of the imperial city walked in and welcomed Old Master Yun with loud laughter. General Yun, on behalf of the royal family, I wish you a long life. The Prime Minister laughed and walked in front of the old man. He cupped his fists and said, This time, I've brought a congratulatory gift for the Yun family. This gift is for Sir Qingya. I'm sure he'll like it. How could a man resist the temptation of beauty? Furthermore, this beauty was a top-grade cauldron. The world wished for it. If Yun Qingya knew all of this, she would definitely accept it happily. Hee. The old man laughed disapprovingly. Then I thank Prime Minister Liu on behalf of Qingya. Even so, it was obvious from the old man's face that he was not interested in the Prime Minister's gift. The Prime Minister did not explain further. He smiled and said, General Yun, you will know how precious this gift is in a moment. He was confident that the Yun family would definitely accept his gift. At that time, General Yun would definitely thank him. Unfortunately, Old Master Yun did not look at him. Instead, he kept his eyes fixed on the outside of the hall, and there was a hint of urgency in his eyes. Why hadn't the Ning family arrived yet? He was still planning to let Ning Xin and Qingya get engaged today, but after waiting for so long, the Ning family still hadn't arrived. At this moment, a servant suddenly rushed in and reported, Lord General, the Ning family has come to congratulate you on your birthday. Ning family? The old man's eyes lit up, and he stood up abruptly. The people from the Ning family had finally arrived. Thinking of this, Grandpa Sheng walked out quickly, planning to welcome his in-laws in person. Seeing his actions, everyone in the hall was shocked. Even when the people from the medical pavilion came to offer their blessings, the general did not go out to welcome them. Who exactly had come this time? How could they make him personally welcome them? In the noisy courtyard, the old master saw Elder Ning standing under the night sky at a glance and hurriedly walked up to him. Chapter 688. General Yun, I'm not late, am I? Elder Ning looked at Old Man Yun, who was walking towards him quickly, and asked with a smile. Haha. Old Man Yun laughed out loud. Elder Ning came at the right time. Let's go. I have something to announce later. Elder Ning chuckled and followed the old man into the hall. The guests were all curious. They didn't know who this old man was, for the general to be so courteous to him. However, they would never ask about things that they shouldn't ask. Just from Old Man Yun's attitude towards him, it could be seen that this old fellow's identity was not ordinary. Elder Ning. Elder Rong caught a glimpse of Elder Ning, who was following Old Man Yun, and greeted him with a smile. This time, you're late to our medical pavilion. Elder Ning glared at Elder Rong. Isn't this because your medical pavilion is so close to the Yun family? I still have to rush over from afar. Oh right, where's Yun girl? She's my goddaughter after all. I haven't seen her for a long time. I want to find her and have a good chat. In the year that Yun Luofeng had left the Yun family, the entire Yun family had been overseen by Elder Ning. However, not long ago, the news of Yun Luofeng annihilating the people of the medical city had reached the Yun family. Elder Ning had wanted to wait for her return. However, something urgent had happened, and he had left the day before Yun Luofeng returned. Therefore, he had not seen Yun Luofeng for more than a year. Goddaughter? Everyone looked at each other. No wonder the general was so polite to this old man. He was actually the Yun family's eldest daughter's godgrandfather. They really didn't know what kind of luck this old man had to be able to curry favor with the Yun family. Grandfather. Suddenly, a joyful voice came from outside the door. Just as Elder Ning turned his head to look, Ning Exine quickly walked in front of him. Grandfather, you're here? A smile appeared on Ning Exine's face. She was dignified and elegant, and her every frown and smile revealed the demeanor of a great family. Yun Qingya stood quietly beside Ning Exine, a smile on her handsome jade-like face. Exiner, seeing the smile on his granddaughter's face, Elder Ning said with some relief, all these years, you've been running around with your grandfather. Now that you've finally stabilized, I can also be at ease. To Elder Ning, nothing was more important than his granddaughter's happiness. From the looks of it, she was living a good life in the Yun family. One could feel the changes in her from her smile alone. All these years, it had really been hard on her. Haha, Elder Ning, don't worry. I will help you take good care of Exiner. The old man laughed and patted Elder Ning's shoulder. Elder Ning smiled reassuringly. Of course I'm relieved to leave Exiner in the Yun family. When the people in the hall heard the conversation between the two old men, they all felt an unusual aura. This aura caused them to be startled. Their eyes involuntarily drifted towards Ning Exine and Yun Qingya, as if they wanted to find some clues from them. Prime Minister Lu's face darkened. This girl and Yun Qingya were too quiet. Especially since the two of them had come to the hall together. They looked like a couple. No, he had to step onto the ship that was the Yun family. Only by doing so could the imperial family be immortalized. Furthermore, he believed that Princess Lingxin had the ability to defeat this lass. Looks like everyone is here. At this moment, an evil voice came from outside the door. Chapter 689. At that moment, the entire hall quietened down as everyone turned to look at the door. Under the moonlight, the young lady was dressed in a robe as white as snow. Her hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was shrouded by the moonlight, radiating a demonic aura. The corners of her lips curled into a slight smile. Even though she knew that Yun Luofeng was the prettiest woman in Longyuan country, it had been a year since they last met. She was even more beautiful than before. Her beauty could cause the downfall of nations and cities. These words could not even describe her beauty. Fenger, you're here? Where's Xiao? Grandfather Yun glanced behind Yun Luofeng but did not see Yun Xiao. He furrowed his brows. According to Yun Xiao's personality, he would never leave his granddaughter's side. But he was not here. Did something happen? Yun Luofeng could see the worry in Grandfather Yun's eyes. His lips curled into a smile. He has something to attend to and has to leave for a while. But he will be back soon to celebrate Grandfather's birthday. If that's the case, the birthday banquet shall begin. Grandfather Yun did not pursue the matter any further. He instructed the crowd to take their seats. Then, he brushed his sleeves and walked towards the main seat. The birthday banquet began in a lively atmosphere. Numerous servants carried delicacies as they walked towards the banquet hall. Premier Lu was not in the mood to taste the delicacies. He was restless. But at this moment, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure among the servants. and he stood up in shock. You're the spiritual sect master? Before he was promoted to premier, he had once reported to the spiritual sect on behalf of the late emperor. Because of that, he was fortunate enough to meet the spiritual sect master. But now, the spiritual sect master had become a servant of the Yun family? Spiritual sect master? The spiritual sect behind Long Yuan country? Why would the spiritual sect master be a servant here? Premier Liu, are you sure you're not mistaken? In the mainland, many commoners thought that the emperor was above the emperor, but they did not know that there was an even more powerful force behind the emperor. But now, those who had come to Grandfather Yun's birthday banquet were not ordinary commoners. With their eyesight, how could they not know the existence of the spiritual sect master? Even Yun Luofeng took a second look at the spirit sect master. It seemed like ever since the sect master of the spirit sect had willingly come to the Yun family to be ordered around in order to admit his mistake, she had forgotten about his existence. Ahem, old Master Yun coughed twice and said arrogantly, everyone has a good eye. This spirit gate sect master has been doing odd jobs for our Yun family for more than a year. Boom. Like a bolt of lightning, everyone's eyes turned dull as they looked at the old man in astonishment. Was the sect master of the spiritual gate really a servant of the Yun family? Good heavens! For the sect master of the spirit sect to willingly come here to do odd jobs, General Yun's power was actually to such an extent? Prime Minister Lu's eyes flickered as he thought about the marriage alliance with the Yun family. General. He steadied his mind, stood up and said respectfully, since Sir Qingya is already here, I'll bring out the present I've prepared for Sir Qingya. Wait. Old Master Yun glanced at Prime Minister Lu and said calmly, we'll talk about the present later. Today, I have something to announce. Hearing Old Master Yun's words, Prime Minister Lu could only retreat. Anyway, there would be plenty of opportunities to present the present later. Chapter 690. When Ning Xian saw Old Man Yun looking at her, she seemed to have sensed something. Her heart suddenly trembled, and a trace of shyness flashed across her beautiful and dignified face. Suddenly, a hand gripped her little hand tightly, causing her heart to gradually regain its calmness. Today, this general is going to announce a joyous matter. This matter concerns my son's life. Old Man Yun smiled and looked at Elder Ning. Elder Ning, I like your granddaughter very much. I wonder if you can betroth her to my son? Elder Ning laughed. This kind of matter can be decided by Exiner herself. I will respect her opinion. Hearing this, the old man looked at Ning Exine again and said with a smile, Exiner, your grandfather has already agreed. What happens next is up to you. I wonder if you can be the daughter-in-law of the Yun family? Ning Exine quickly glanced at Yun Qingya and shyly lowered her head. I'm willing. How could she not be willing to spend the rest of her life with Yun Qingya? Ha ha ha. Old Man Yun laughed heartily. My son finally has a wife. Tomorrow, I will choose a good day for you to get married. At that time, the two of you must work hard to create children. It would be best if you could give birth to 2 fat babies. It was obvious that the old man wanted to hug a child so badly that he was going crazy. Whether it was a grandson or a great-grandson, as long as it was a fat baby. Congratulations, General. This is truly a joyous occasion. The guests all came forward and sincerely congratulated him. Only Prime Minister Lu's expression was exceptionally ugly. He couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Why? Why was it that his plan was so good, yet it was snatched away by a girl of unknown origins? Whether it was her identity or appearance, this girl could not compare to Princess Ling Exine. What qualifications did she have to become the daughter-in-law of the Yun family? Oh, right. The old man seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Prime Minister Lu. Prime Minister Lu, could it be that you already knew that my son was going to get engaged, so you prepared a wedding gift for him? I wonder what the gift is. Take it out and let me take a look. Prime Minister Lu's eyes darkened slightly, and a resolute look flashed across his eyes. Men, Take out the gift I gave to young Master Qingya." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw two guards carrying a large red box in from outside the main hall. A bouquet of red flowers was tied to the top of the box, and there was a big hole in the middle. It was hard to tell what was inside the box. "Open the chest." Prime Minister Liu waved his hand and immediately ordered. "Yes, Prime Minister." The two guards put down the box and opened it as ordered. When they saw the gift in the box, not to mention old Master Yun, even the faces of the other guests in the hall changed greatly. In the large red box, a young girl of about 17 or 18 years old was tied up with a red rope. Her mouth was stuffed with a piece of red cloth, and her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the people in the hall. There was a clear trace of fear in her eyes. Yun Qingya held Ning Xian's hand tightly as his cold gaze swept towards Prime Minister Liu. A hint of killing intent gradually emerged in his eyes. Of course, the person who was the most furious was Elder Ning. This bastard sent a woman on his own granddaughter's engagement day. If he wasn't trying to make things difficult for her, then what was? He had always treasured his granddaughter dearly. How could he allow her to suffer such grievances? However, Elder Ning knew that the Yun family would deal with this matter. Therefore, he only snorted coldly and did not do anything. Chapter 691. This is the gift you want to give my son? Senior Yun sneered and glanced at Prime Minister Liu coldly. Prime Minister Liu gritted his teeth, cupped his fists and said, "General Yun, this is Princess Lingxin of our royal family. Her physique is a little special, so His Majesty specially sent Princess Lingxin to young Master Qingya as a concubine. Princess Lingxin's existence will be of great help to Princess Qingya." When he said the word concubine, Prime Minister Liu was very unwilling. After all, Ning Xian was already engaged to Yun Qingya. It was obviously unrealistic for Lingxin to be his wife, so he could only make her a concubine. As long as he could marry into the Yun family, it did not matter whether she was a wife or a concubine. Moreover, he had confidence in Lingxin. With Lingxin's physique, as long as Yun Qingya tasted the sweetness, how could she give up? At that time, he would let Princess Lingxin make a request, and Yun Qingya would definitely divorce Ning Xian. Promote the princess to the main wife. Old Master Yun's expression became more and more unsightly. He sneered and said, "Prime Minister Liu, you have been in Long Yuan for so long, but you still don't know the rules of the Yun family? Our Yun family has always believed in one person for life. There will never be a concubine. You'd better stop dreaming." To Old Master Yun, a concubine was an existence that destroyed the harmony of the family. If a man wanted to establish a career outside, his home must be peaceful, and the condition for the peace of the home was that there only needed one mistress in the backyard. Moreover, ever since he met Qingya's mother, he had never cared about other women. Even though his mother had passed away, he had never thought of remarrying. Yun Luofeng's parents were the same. If he could not meet the person he loved, he would rather not marry. But once he met her, he only needed her for the rest of his life. If that was the case, why would the old man help Yun Qingya take in a concubine? It was even more impossible for Ning Xian to suffer. Prime Minister Liu's expression darkened. He made up his mind and said, "General Yun, Princess Lingxin's physique is special. If Yun Qingya dual cultivates with her, her strength will definitely increase by a lot. I am also considering the Yun family." Old Master Yun raised his chin and said domineeringly, "I'll give you a choice. Take Princess Lingxin and scram." Prime Minister Liu did not expect General Yun to ask him to leave. Could it be that this old man really didn't want his son to become stronger? "General Yun, I feel that this still depends on young Master Qingya's attitude." Prime Minister Liu really didn't want to give up. He gritted his teeth and said, "If you stop young Master Qingya's opportunity to soar to the top, perhaps he will hate you in the future." Old Master Yun was so angry that he laughed. Why were these officials so shameless? He had already told them to scram, but they still shamelessly stayed here. Thinking of this, old man Yun turned to Yun Qingya with a sneer. Qingya, you deal with it. Premier Lu heaved a sigh of relief. This Yun Qingya was still a hot-blooded man. How could he refuse the temptation of beauty? Furthermore, Princess Lingxin could help him increase his strength. With such a good thing, he would definitely gladly accept it. Father, there's no need to waste words with these people. Yun Qingya glanced at Prime Minister Lu indifferently and said lightly, just get someone to beat them out. The smile on Premier Lu's face froze. What did he just say? Kick them out? Chapter 692. What are you still standing there for? The old man glared at the guards in the hall and coldly said, throw this bastard who came to cause trouble out of here immediately. From now on, no one from the royal family is allowed to take a step into our Yun family. In addition, don't let me see anyone related to the royal family outside. I'll beat them up once I see them. A wave of complete coldness came from the soles of Prime Minister Lu's feet, causing his entire body to feel extremely cold. He knew that this time, he was truly finished. Throw the gifts out as well. Yun Qingya frowned and said coldly, wait a moment. Seeing that the guards had obeyed the order and were walking forward, Ning Xian's voice suddenly sounded, interrupting their actions. Xiner, what are you doing? Elder Ning was stunned for a moment as he looked at his granddaughter in confusion. Ning Xian smiled lightly and did not answer Elder Ning's words. She gently pushed away Yun Qingya's hand and said softly, Big brother Yun, wait for me for a moment. All right. Yun Qingya nodded slightly, but her gaze was still following Ning Xian. Ning Xian slowly walked towards Prime Minister Lu. The corners of her lips gradually curled up into an arc. Her steps were dignified, and her appearance was beautiful. What do you want? Seeing Ning Xian walking towards him, Prime Minister Lu's expression suddenly changed as he said coldly. Ning Xian stopped in front of him and smiled softly. Do you think I'm a country girl from who knows where? Wasn't that right? With Prime Minister Lu's experience, he only knew of the existence of the Spirit Gate and the medical pavilion. He had never heard of the Ning family. That was why he did not take Ning Xian seriously. If he knew the strength of the Ning family, he would not have dared to do what he did today. Prime Minister Lu snorted. As this was the Yun family's territory, he did not dare to say a word. However, his expression still expressed the disdain in his heart. Since you think I'm a country girl, then I, a country girl, can make you unable to fight back. Ning Xian still had a smile on her face as she spoke with a faint smile. She knew that if she did not display some of her strength today, there would definitely be many women coming to disturb her and Yun Qingya in the future. Therefore, she had to start with Prime Minister Lu. Prime Minister Lu sneered. I'm an advanced intermediate spiritualist, after all, and I'm only a step away from becoming an advanced spiritualist. Are you saying that you can render me powerless to fight back? A disdainful smile appeared on his face. If you don't believe me, I can let you try. Ning Xian smiled. As soon as she finished speaking, a wave of power suddenly rose from her body. The power was like a huge mountain, pressing down on Prime Minister Lu fiercely. Prime Minister Lu's eyes flashed. In that instant, everyone could hear the crisp sound of Prime Minister Lu's bones cracking. Then, a sorrowful wail resounded through the entire Yun family. Prime Minister Lu couldn't breathe under the pressure. His eyes were filled with fear, and his body was trembling slightly. How powerful he. She was just a country bumpkin who relied on the Yun family. How could she have such great power? Prime Yun, Elder Yun said, he not, he prime comma king comma, and the comma. But now, Prime Minister Lu realized that he had been wrong. He had been ridiculously wrong. If Prime Yun really did not have any power, how could he have become Yun Luofeng's grandfather? His granddaughter could not possibly possess such power. Chapter 693. Earth Spiritualist. Someone in the hall let out a cry of surprise. This little girl is an Earth spiritualist. That's right. I've met an Earth spiritualist before and felt his power. It's exactly the same as this little girl's. She must be an Earth spiritualist. Prime Minister Liu, who was already pale, felt even more hopeless when he heard this. Today is Grandfather Yun's birthday. I don't want your blood to taint this joyous occasion. If you have any ideas about Big Brother Yun in the future, don't blame me for being rude. Scram immediately. Ning Xian raised her brows and shouted sternly. This time, Prime Minister Liu did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately turned around and ran out. He did not even pay attention to Princess Lingxin as he only cared about running for his life. After Prime Minister Liu left, Ning Xian glanced at Princess Lingxin. It had to be said that Princess Lingxin was indeed extremely beautiful, especially the tearful expression in her eyes. It was truly pitiful. Princess Lingxin shook her head desperately as she looked at Ning Xian, who was walking towards her. She wanted to say something, but her mouth was stuffed with a red handkerchief, and she could only whimper. Ning Xian pulled out her long sword. With a swoosh, the sword light flashed and cut the ropes binding Princess Lingxin. I know that you did not do this willingly, so I don't blame you. You can leave now. Ning Xian looked at Princess Lingxin's pale face and paused before she continued. However, I have to remind you that the royal family is merciless. They will do anything to achieve their goals, even if they have to tie you up and give you away. Princess Lingxin's body trembled slightly, and she lowered her head. Her face was filled with pain. My brother usually treats me so well. Why did he have to do such a cruel thing this time? It was precisely because I was unwilling to get married that he did not hesitate to tie me up and stuff me into a box. He even gave me away in public. Wasn't he afraid that the royal family would be humiliated because of this? You'd better leave this place and go as far as you can. There's no need for you to come back. Ning Xian glanced at Princess Lingxin. As for the royal family, don't worry. They won't dare to chase after you. Lingxin's eyes lit up slightly. She understood that even if she was lucky enough to escape this calamity, her brother would still give her away as a gift to someone else one day. If that was the case, why should she stay here? She might as well go to a quiet village and live the rest of her life incognito. Thank you. Ling Xian's lips moved slightly as she looked gratefully at Ning Xian. Then, she walked out of the house into the dark night without looking back. Ning Xian bit her lips tightly as she looked in the direction that Princess Lingxin had left. After a long while, she finally retracted her gaze and looked at Yun Qingya's concerned eyes. Initially, I didn't want to meddle in other people's business. However, after seeing Princess Lingxin, I was reminded of myself. Back then, if Yun Luofeng had not rushed over in time, perhaps her fate would have been the same as Lingxin's. Therefore, when she saw Ling Xian this time, her compassion was aroused and she wanted to help her. A smile appeared on Yun Qingya's face. I will have the Yun family escort her away. If Ning Xian wanted to help him, he would help her this once. So what? Furthermore, Princess Lingxin had not done this willingly. She had been forced by the royal family. Big Brother Yun, thank you. Looking at the elegant smile on the man's face, Ning Xian's heart suddenly moved, and her eyes shone brightly. Xian, Old Master Yun said with a smile. We're family now. Why are you still thanking him? Whatever he does for you is what he should do. After saying this, the old man glared at Yun Qingya. Chapter 694. Yun Luofeng rubbed her nose. She had thought that the old man would only side with Yun Shao, but she did not expect that when facing Yun Qingya and Ning Xian, she would also side with Ning Xian without holding back. Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng felt much more at ease. Grandfather, the birthday banquet will continue. Don't let those people affect the festive atmosphere today. Yun Luofeng said with a smile. All right. The old man laughed. Everyone, please take your seats. All the guests took their seats, but there were always some unharmonious elements. A man with an air of nobility stood up from his seat and said with a smile, General Yun, I heard that Miss Yun is very close to a guard. I wonder if she has ever married that guard? The old man was stunned for a moment, but he still said honestly no. Even though the people of Long Yuan country called Yun Xiao the son-in-law of the Yun family, the two of them even had a child, but they were not married yet. It was obvious that the Yun family did not want Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao to get married. The man's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, "General Yun, since Miss Yun is not married yet, I would like to propose a marriage on behalf of my son. I wonder what General Yun thinks?" "Father?" Hearing this, the expression of the youth beside the man changed, his eyes filled with anxiety. This Yun Luofeng was indeed beautiful, but it was a pity that she had a child with another man. Did his father want him to wear this green hat? "Shut up." The noble man glared at the youth beside him and said sternly, "Father will make the decision on this matter. You have no right to speak." Even though Yun Luofeng was no longer pure in the eyes of the world, and even had a child, in this continent where the strong were respected, if you had great power, no matter what you did, you would be forgiven. This was the reality of the human heart. The youth angrily sat down, his face full of anger. He did not want to marry a woman who was not pure. When the other guests saw that the man had snatched the initiative, they hurriedly stood up and hurriedly promoted their children and grandchildren. "General Yun, I think my son is not bad. If you are willing, I can let him come to your Yun family as a son-in-law." "Your son is not bad. Your son is only a playboy. How can he be worthy of Miss Yun? I think my grandson is more outstanding." Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened as he watched the people arguing. His lips curled into a smile. The young master of the Cool Breeze faction is rumored to frequent brothels and already has countless concubines in his backyard. As for the young masters of the Zhang clan and Rong clan, even though they don't have many women in their harem, they already have a few concubines. "What makes you think you're worthy of me?" Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, the hall instantly quietened down. The few people who were fighting over her said with some embarrassment, "It's normal for a man to have a few concubines." Yun Luofeng's cold eyes glanced at the person who spoke. "Did you understand what my father said just now? The people of my Yun family have always only wanted 2 people for a lifetime. There would be no room for a second person. Just this alone is enough to prove that the descendants of your clan are not worthy of me." The young girl's words were loud and arrogant, as if she didn't put these people in her eyes at all. "Miss Yun, I can let my son leave the harem. Please give us a chance." The head of the Rong clan was not willing to let go of this opportunity. He hurriedly swore, "Furthermore, I can guarantee that he will not do anything to let Miss Yun down in the future." Chapter 695. Yun Luofeng slightly raised the corner of his lips. "Whether it's in the future or in the past, I, Yun Luofeng, can only be a woman. If you can't even maintain your purity, how can you talk about sincerity?" Those people's expressions changed slightly. Some of them wanted to say, "Don't you already have a child? What right do you have to criticize others?" However, no one dared to say this out loud. Who asked General Yun's residence to be too powerful? "Miss Yun." The Rong Manor chief laughed awkwardly. "In this world, it's normal for a man to have a few wives and concubines. I'm already willing to let my son disperse the harem so that you won't be wronged." This was something very few men could do. Not to mention the past. A normal man will take in a concubine at the age of maturity. I hope Miss Yun can understand. Yun Luofeng laughed coldly. How can I understand a man who is frivolous about his feelings? When the Rong Manor's young master heard Yun Luofeng's words, he was enraged. Originally, he wanted to stand up and argue with Yun Luofeng, but he was forcefully pressed down by the manor lord. Cough, cough. Old Master Yun coughed dryly and said, "I'm sure everyone didn't hear what I said before. If a member of the Yun family doesn't meet someone they truly love, then they definitely won't carelessly marry someone else. However, the way you treat your relationship is not something my Yun family can accept. If you continue to pester us, then get the hell out of here." The Rong clan's young master could no longer suppress his violent temper and stood up. Didn't Yun Luofeng also have a child? And you still haven't married him? Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes slightly and looked coldly at the young master of the Rong Manor. The curve of her lips gradually revealed a trace of evil. You have a problem with me not getting married? Her voice was clearly as light as a gust of wind, but it caused the heart of the Rong estate's young master to tremble fiercely. He actually didn't dare to say a single word. Patriarch. Under this cold atmosphere, a servant hurried in and respectfully clasped his hands together as he said, Clan leader, the Ghost Emperor's people are here. They say they are here to bring gifts and ask to marry the first young Mississippi Ghost Emperor, Yun Xiao. Old Master Yun's eyes lit up. Had Yun Xiao been enlightened? He actually knows how to propose marriage by acting first and reporting later. In such a public place, how could his granddaughter refuse? Let him in. The old man's breathing tightened as he hurriedly said. The entire hall became silent at this moment. Everyone stared at the door, their eyes filled with shock. They didn't know of the Ning family, but they had heard of the Ghost Emperor. According to rumors, the Ghost Emperor was extremely powerful and ruthless. Because he always wore a mask, no one knew what the Ghost Emperor looked like. Who would have thought that the Ghost Emperor and the Yun family's eldest miss would have such a relationship? Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, a group of guards led by Qin Yuan walked in with a large red box on their shoulders. There were too many boxes. From afar, there were more than 100 of them. More than 100 boxes of betrothal gifts. How extravagant is that? I just don't know what's inside these boxes. The betrothal gifts from the Ghost Emperor will definitely not be bad. That's not necessarily the case. Using 100 boxes of betrothal gifts is already very expensive. If they were filled with treasures, wouldn't it be a waste of money? So, I'm guessing that there are at most some gold, silver, and jewelry inside. For ordinary people, gold, silver, and jewelry were also considered precious items. However, for those who could climb to this position, gold, silver, and jewelry were useless to them. Chapter 696. Look, isn't that Yun Luofeng's bodyguard? Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out. Once everyone's eyes had shifted away from the betrothal gifts, they landed on the man who had just stepped into the hall. Under the moonlight, the man's black robes fluttered in the wind, making him look noble and domineering. Ever since he had entered the great hall, his gaze had been fixed on Yun Luofeng and had not left him at all. His handsome face was no longer as cold as it used to be. The corners of his cold and stiff lips were slightly curled into a shallow smile. It was fine when the man did not smile, but when he did, it was a feast for the eyes. Even if his smile was so shallow that it could barely be seen. The crowd had never seen a man smile so mesmerizing. It was as if a hand was fiercely scratching their hearts, making them feel unbearably itchy. Master, the betrothal gifts have been placed down. After Qin Yuan had placed down the betrothal gifts, he walked in front of Yun Xiao and cupped his fists as he spoke. Master? This form of address caused everyone who was still in a state of shock to wake up. Their expressions were as if they had just eaten feces. Yun Luofeng's personal bodyguard was the legendary Ghost Emperor? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. If he was the Ghost Emperor, why would he come to the Yun family to become a bodyguard? Furthermore, the Yun family had not been powerful enough back then. Open the betrothal gifts. Yun Xiao slightly raised the corners of her lips as she spoke. Yes, master. Hearing this, the bodyguards hurriedly put down their burdens and opened the boxes. In an instant, the countless medicinal ingredients within the boxes fell into the eyes of the guests. In particular, there was a rather eye-catching sapling among the medicinal ingredients. TSK, I thought that the Ghost Emperor's betrothal gifts would be very precious. At the very least, they would be expensive jewels. I never thought that it would only be a pile of medicinal ingredients. Perhaps he did not have enough medicinal ingredients, so he brought a sapling to make up the numbers. I think that Lady Yun does not hold his heart at all. Otherwise, he would not have used these betrothal gifts to dupe her. While the crowd was filled with disdain, They did not notice that Elder Rong, who had been as steady as a mountain, had suddenly stood up and looked in shock at the medicinal ingredients in the boxes. Impossible. This is impossible. Elder Rong shook his head firmly, his face full of disbelief. Elder Ning looked at Elder Rong in astonishment. What is impossible? What happened to you? At the same time, the rest of the people were also attracted by Elder Rong's words, and they all turned to look at him. Elder Rong's face was filled with excitement. These medicinal herbs are all rare medicinal herbs that are hard to come by in 100 years. Oh, that's not right. There are even 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Any one of these medicinal herbs would fetch a sky-high price in an auction. What? Elder Rong's words stunned everyone. Because this old man was an elder of the medical pavilion, no one doubted a single word that he had said. Elder Rong took a deep breath to suppress the shock in his heart. As for those medicinal herbs that have matured for thousands of years, I can tell you that they are priceless. Demand but no supply? These 4 words were like a clap of thunder, causing those who had mocked him to lower their heads in shame. Perhaps, even if they were to go bankrupt, they still wouldn't be able to afford a single stalk of medicinal herb here. However, the Ghost Emperor had actually brought 100 boxes over. 100 boxes. These are 100 boxes of rare medicinal herbs. Elder Rong looked at Yun Luofeng with envy and jealousy. His tone was a little sour. Especially the 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Even our medical pavilion only has a few stocks, but the Ghost Emperor had brought 100 boxes over. In every box, there are more than 10,000-year-old medicinal herbs. Chapter 697. With Elder Rong's understanding of medicinal herbs, he only needed a glance to know how many 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs there were. Elder Rong sighed and continued, however, among these medicinal ingredients, the 1,000-year-old medicinal ingredients are not the most valuable. What? 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs were still not the most precious? What was precious? Everyone looked at Elder Rong in shock, as if waiting for him to give them an answer. Elder Rong snorted. The most precious thing is, of course, the sapling that you all look down on. This sapling is not an ordinary sapling, but the legendary Bodhi tree. Bodhi tree? What is that? It's said that the fruits of the Bodhi tree can provide a large amount of spiritual energy for martial artists. If this Bodhi tree bears fruit and eats all the Bodhi fruits, even a celestial spirit practitioner can break through to the next level. Following Elder Rong's words, the entire hall fell silent. At this moment, everyone felt their hearts race. They no longer dared to think that Yun Luofeng had no place in the Ghost Emperor's heart. If he didn't have any status, why would he spend so much money to find so many medicinal herbs? Yun Xiao slowly walked towards Yun Luofeng and knelt on one knee. He grabbed Yun Luofeng's hand and brought it to his lips to gently kiss it. At this moment, Yun Xiao was like a knight, and the person standing in front of him was the queen that he had to protect for his entire life. When everyone saw the scene of Yun Xiao proposing on her knees, they were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. All of them felt that it was inconceivable. Yun Luofeng's strength was indeed very strong, but the Ghost Emperor was even stronger. But now, he was kneeling to this young lady? This was clearly giving up all of his dignity. Was it worth it for a woman? Before I met you, there was no one in my life. Yun Xiao's voice was hoarse and low, but his eyes were filled with sincerity. To the me at that time, all women were like white bones and all the living things in the world were like ants. Other than killing people, I have nothing else to do. Indeed, ever since he was chased out of the Xiao family, there was only killing left in his life. However, I'm lucky to have met you. Yun Xiao held Yun Luofeng's hand tightly and said, "You are my one and only true love in both my lives. He is also the person that I will protect with my entire life. I understand that you are strong and independent, so I let you fight. But if you are tired, you can rely on my embrace. My power can also be used by you." Yun Xiao's eyes were filled with Yun Luofeng. "If you want to stand in front, then I will be the man behind you. If you want to stand behind me, I will slaughter all your enemies for you." This was the sentence that Yun Shao had said the most in history, but it was from the bottom of his heart. Even the surrounding guests could feel the man's infatuation. "You make the world your enemy. I will slaughter the entire world for you. Since you are the enemy of the gods and Buddhas, I will kill all of them for you. If you want to be strong and independent, then I will stand behind you and protect you for the rest of your life." Yun Luofeng looked at the man who was kneeling on one knee. Her eyes flickered, and her heart was filled with warmth. Her lips curled into a smile. "Feng Er, will you marry me?" The man's gaze was somewhat expectant, but also somewhat nervous, as if he was worried that she would reject him. Under the man's expectant gaze, the girl opened her mouth and softly said, "Okay." Chapter 698. Yun Zhao's body stiffened, and he quickly rose to his feet. His large hand pressed tightly on Yun Luofeng's shoulder as his breathing quickened. "You agree? Has she really agreed?" Yun Luofeng raised his brow evilly. "I agree to your proposal, but I have a condition." "All right, I agree to your condition." Yun Zhao's usually grim features were filled with excitement as his dark eyes stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng curled his lips. "Aren't you going to ask me what my condition is?" "I won't. I'll agree to whatever condition you have." Yun Shao has always been obedient in front of Yun Luofeng. Hence, no matter what Yun Luofeng's condition was, he would agree to it. "I have 3 conditions. First, you can only have me as your woman in the future. If you have anyone else, I will immediately divorce you." Yun Luofeng raised his brow as he spoke. "I won't have anyone else." Yun Zhao's expression was filled with determination. "Besides, I won't even look at another woman. If I take another look at them, I'll cripple my own eyes." Aside from Yun Luofeng, there was no one else in his eyes. Second, Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. "Let's get engaged this time and get married when we return from the other mainland. As she has yet to reach the martial honor rank, she could not consummate her marriage with him. Hence, she had raised this condition." Yun Shao nodded. "I'll listen to you." "Third, I will share the same bed with you as before, but before I reach the martial honor rank, you're not allowed to touch me." Yun Shao stared at the young girl in front of him as a smile flashed across his dark eyes. "You're saying that we can consummate our marriage once you've reached the martial honor rank?" "That's right." Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile. Hearing this, Yun Shao fell silent. She was thinking of a way to speed up Yun Luofeng's breakthrough, however. That method must not have any side effects. "I'll agree to any of your conditions. He has already endured for so many days, so why would he be in such a hurry?" As long as she agrees to his proposal, no one would be able to have any ideas about her in the future. "Young girl," Elder Rong looked at Yun Luofeng and chuckled. "Our relationship is already so good. Why don't you give me a few of your herbs? My requirements are not high. Just give me 2 stalks of 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs." Yun Luofeng glanced at Elder Rong and said domineeringly, "Not giving." "Yun Lass." Elder Rong looked at her pitifully. "How about just 1? Or half a stalk will do." "No, not even a single leaf." How could she give the betrothal gift that Yun Shao had given her to someone else? This meant a lot to her. "How about this? I've recently prepared a pot of wine for my old man's birthday. This is the wine I brewed myself. I'll let you have a taste." "Wine?" Elder Rong was startled. This girl knew how to brew wine. However, it would take more than 10 years. The wine that Yun Luofeng brewed couldn't compare to something that had aged for more than 10 years. Moreover, he had no interest in drinking. "Girl, I don't like to drink. If you don't want to part with the 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs, you can give me a few 100-year-old ones." Elder Rong blinked and looked at Yun Luofeng in an aggrieved manner. He had already decided to thicken his skin and ask for the medicinal herbs. "Try my wine, and you will naturally know whether it's good or bad." Yun Luofeng smiled mysteriously and raised his hand to clap. Instantly, a maidservant walked over with a pot of wine and carefully poured a cup for Elder Rong. Chapter 699. Once the wine was poured into the goblet, a fragrant aroma filled the entire main hall. Even Elder Rong, who did not like to drink, could not help but swallow his saliva. Elder Rong could not help but drink the entire goblet. As the wine entered his stomach, he felt a coolness in his stomach, as if spiritual qi was slowly flowing. Not long ago, he was already on the verge of breaking through, but he could not hit the barrier. But now, he could clearly feel that the wine he had drunk had turned into a stream of spiritual energy that was continuously hitting against the bottleneck. Due to the impact, the barrier inside Elder Rong's body finally loosened a little. With a boom, it broke open, and a spiritual qi storm instantly spiraled above his head. Suddenly, broke through? Everyone was stunned. They looked at Yun Luofeng in astonishment, their eyes filled with shock. "Young Lady Yun, what's going on?" Elder Rong blinked and asked in surprise. Even he was confused and did not know what was going on. "This wine of mine is named spiritual wine. It can provide a small amount of spiritual qi for spiritualists." Elder Rong was just lucky that he was just a step away from breaking through. Otherwise, it would not have such a powerful effect. Yun Luofeng curled her lips. This spiritual wine was her masterpiece from the past few days. The spiritual wine contained countless spiritual herbs. Not only could it provide a small amount of spiritual qi for spiritualists, but it could also strengthen one's body and bones. It could improve one's body. One of the reasons why Yun Luofeng took it out for Elder Rong to taste was because she could tell that Elder Rong was at a bottleneck, so she wanted to see if the spiritual wine could help him break through. The second reason was that Elder Rong had helped her a lot over the years and protected her in everything. Therefore, she used this goblet of spiritual wine to repay him. "Young girl, quick, give me your spiritual wine." The old man gulped and said hurriedly, "This pot of spiritual wine is all yours." Yun Luofeng smiled helplessly and sent a maidservant to bring the spiritual wine to the old man. The old man did not care about anything else. He picked up the spiritual wine and poured it into his mouth. Very soon, the spiritual wine entered his stomach. "Great wine, great wine. This is the best wine I've ever had in my life." The old man licked the corner of his mouth and said unwillingly, Do you have any more of this wine?" he asked Yun Luofeng anxiously. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. "There are still 2 bottles of spirit wine. I've already placed them in your study. You can." Shua. Before she could finish her words, Grandpa Sheng rushed out of the door, not even caring about the guests in the hall. At this moment, his mind was filled with thoughts of fine wine. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched as he turned to Yun Qingya and Ning Xian. "Second uncle, second aunt, I'll leave the matter of receiving the guests to you. If anyone tries to make trouble, just throw them out." Ning Xian blushed when she called her second aunt. She lowered her head shyly. "Yun Xiao, I'm tired. Let's return to our room to rest. Also, send the herbs to my room later." Yun Luofeng yawned, turned around, and walked out of the hall. After they left, the guests were still discussing among themselves. Perhaps, after today, the Yun family's position on the continent would undergo an even greater change. After returning to his room, Yun Luofeng directly entered the divine grimoire's space and handed all the medicinal herbs to little Imo. Fortunately, as her strength grew, the medicinal field had expanded countless times. The medicinal herbs that Yun Xiao had sent over could be planted in 10 batches. Chapter 700. Little Imo, is the seed still the same? Yun Luofeng looked at the peaceful ground and frowned. That day, after she had obtained the seed from the auction, she had planted it in the medicine field. But now, after a year, the seed had not changed at all. "Master, I don't know what's going on either. Why hasn't the seed changed at all?" Logically, It's impossible. Yun Luofeng was silent for a moment. Looks like we need to wait. If that's the case, let's cultivate the other herbs first. After saying this, Yun Luofeng picked up one of the herbs. As she was a little uneasy, she did not notice the sharp thorns on the herb and accidentally cut her fingertip. Master, are you okay? Little Mo's expression was tense as she anxiously walked to Yun Luofeng's side. Yun Luofeng shook her head. I'm fine. Let's continue. She did not care about the wound on her finger at all. She did not notice that a drop of blood from her fingertip had dripped onto the ground where the seed was planted. In an instant, the ground flashed with a green light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After everything was done, Yun Luofeng left the divine grimoire space and returned to her room, midnight. A scream woke her up from her slumber, causing her to open her eyes. Master, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Little Mo's voice was anxious in her soul. Yun Luofeng could not think as her consciousness entered the divine grimoire space. Wah? Seeing Yun Luofeng appear, Little Mo immediately cried and said pitifully, Master, the herbs, the herbs. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows and looked at the herb field. The herbs they had planted earlier had all withered as if their vitality had been sucked away by something. Little Mo, what's going on? Yun Luofeng's expression darkened. Her heart ached for the herbs. What's more, these herbs were given to her by Yun Xiao. How had they become like this? I don't know, Little Mo said, sobbing. I wasn't paying attention just now and the herbs all withered. I don't know what happened. Master, this is the divine grimoire space. There's plenty of spiritual energy here. The herbs shouldn't have withered. How did this happen? Yun Luofeng frowned and looked around. Finally, her gaze landed on the ground where the seed was buried. She was stunned. Following Gu Ruoyun's gaze, Xiaomo could not help but stare at the book on the medicine field. The seed has sprouted? Little Mo rubbed her eyes. She looked at the seedlings that looked like bean sprouts in the medicine field, and her heart suddenly became excited. Master, the seed has sprouted. Don't tell me he was the one who stole the medicinal herbs? Yun Luofeng looked at the sapling and pondered for a moment before making up his mind. Apart from the Bodhi tree, continue planting the other herbs. I want to see what this is. Yes, Master. Little Mo's eyes lit up. He had a premonition that he had cultivated something amazing this time. After Yun Luofeng left, Little Mo continued to plant the herbs in the field. Then, he sat in a corner and stared at the sapling without blinking. However, this little sapling seemed to have eaten its fill and did not move anymore. It only stood quietly in the light breeze. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.